Tref partner, founding, oh yeah, pardon me, Dr. Boyce Watkins also a co-owner in the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, a part of this Black House Legacy Center building in our portfolio practice. See, this is what I love. It's one thing if you've got someone like Dr. Boyce Watkins who can talk that Black power talk, talk that unapologetically Black talk, talk that unity talk, talk that Black excellence talk. But when we launched this fund and I called him, he said, bro, not only am I going to invest, I'm going to make sure I'm making a substantial investment. I want to put my money where my mouth is, and I want to support this historic movement. I want to support your vision for what I've seen you put in work. He asked me questions. He just didn't do it blindly. Oh, you Black man, here you go. He did his diligence. He asked me questions about the fund, about our vision, about our strategy, about our compliance, about our treasury, about the regulations, about our investment model. And he said, King, I've been around business for years. This sounds very not only interesting, but sounds legit, sounds like you thought it out, sounds well vetted. And the King put his money up with his queen to all, again, come together. And that's an example of the power of Black dollars. Not just Black blogging, but actually Black investing, Black partnership, Black co-ownership. So salute to that.
Let me just say something. I remember that conversation because I was in Guyana when we had that talk. And I remember exactly where I was sitting when we had the discussion. We talked like a really long time. And I remember, you know, it's because you get approached by things like this all the time. And, you know, like, oh, I want to build a school and I want you to give me a bunch of money or whatever, you know, things like that. And I was really, you know, I'm not going to say skeptical. I wasn't skeptical. I heard you out, but I remember you had great answers to every single question that I had. And I was super impressed by that. And I want to make sure people just kind of know that's what really sold me. You know, was when you just really had done all your homework, dotted your I's and crossed your T's. And that's what I told Alicia right after we talked. And then I remember being on your Instagram, and I also saw, like right when I saw it, when you were announcing and launching it, I saw Nipsey Hussle had left that note saying, oh man, this is dope, bro. I'm gonna invest 10K in it. And I was like, yeah, 10K, that's a good number. So I'm gonna go ahead and do, you know, so I remember those moments precisely. And I'm so proud the community got behind you. I just want to mention that, man, but go ahead, brother. I just want to share that was an excellent layout that you did.
All right, thank you, King. Appreciate you. I'm getting my technical stuff together still as we go. And nah, that was important for me too. Like just to get that, it wasn't even for me. It was for me because my vision is for us. So when I seen folks like yourself, when I seen Nipsey hit me instantly, not only in a comment, in a DM, like, yo, bro, here's my number. Like me and my man trying to do something similar, and why recreate the wheel when you already got it. And so when we had that kind of support and momentum, like that's what it's all about. It's not about an instant level of skepticism when a Black man does something. It's actually, or a Black woman. It should be an instant level of diligence, of us being wise and astute, but also an instant level of, let me see what that brother got going on. You know what I mean? And let me see how we can build, and that's so important. And so speaking of that, the next king up, the multifamily king, specialist Jullien Gordon is another Tref founding partner who really stepped up and was shocked that more didn't step up as successful entrepreneurs to make a substantial investment. But King Jullien Gordon, please welcome to the Power of Black Dollar Community Panel Forum webinar. And please bless us with some words. I know you're going to go in, so I'm going to need to let it go.
Hey, no, I'm not going to go in yet. I'm just going to introduce myself so we can get the conversation rolling. What's going on, everybody? I'm glad to be here. It's an honor. I come in the spirit of Harriet Tubman. That is an ancestor spirit that I channel and that guides me. And as you know, she freed 300 people through the Underground Railroad over the course of a decade by making 19 trips below the Mason-Dixon line. I free people through the Above Ground Railroad, which is multifamily real estate, and I lead the multifamily movement as well as the financial church, which teaches us the spirituality of money. So that is my work, is the multifamily movement and the financial church, and I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, and I hope that I can mentality and the spirituality of money to this conversation to help us advance, because I believe that our spirituality is one of our greatest intangible assets.
Yeah, Jullien, I need you to keep going for a second.
All right, I'll keep going. So with that, if you were on the live, that Jay and I did on Thursday, we went in and yeah, going in on continue conversation that our faith is our greatest asset. The reason why we as people of color are so creative is because we're the closest to Creator. And that's been that way for a long, long time. And we haven't tapped into that. Other people have been able to capitalize off of our spirituality, our creativity. And now it's time for us to reclaim that. We know that when we talk about the power of the black dollar itself, we know that a dollar has no inherent value. It's literally 75% cotton. And most of us are out here still picking cotton on a daily basis, right? So what we're trying to do is actually elevate and identify where's the true value, because it's not in money itself. That is just paper, right? The cash is the lowest yielding asset in the entire world. It yields 0.03% in your bank account. It'll take you 2,400 years to double your money in a bank account. So we know, everybody on this panel knows that we don't hoard cash. We know that currency is supposed to flow. That's why it's called currency, right? It's supposed to have a current. And we are trying to educate all of you to figure out what channel you want to flow your currency to. Beyond our emergency funds, beyond what we need to protect our families, and beyond our operating expenses, all of our money is in play. And so this is how we operate, and this is the way we're going to have to operate if we are going to step into the wealth that we deserve. I believe that abundance is our birthright. Scripture says that, and so I want to carry us into that new reality.
Absolutely. Amen. And thank you for that segue. And I know, great spirit, great energy. Again, everyone that's on this panel, in this forum, why I personally reached out to you all wasn't about platform size. It wasn't about who made the most money. It wasn't about some of the superficial things that we kind of get caught up in the social media era. It's because every single one of you I had an opportunity to build with personally. Every single one of you exuded a parallel energy that I feel is to mine. Everyone was operating at a high vibration. Everyone felt like family. Like, I've never been at Dr. Boyce's house, but I just feel like I could go over his house and sit on his couch and that's his cousin. You know what I mean? Like, Jullien, I feel like that's like my little bro for real. Like, I really feel like, you know, he could ride around me and Ernestine and be like, yo, where we going next? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, I really feel like, you know, Troy and Rashad are just like, yo, my cousins from up top. Like, yo, my New York cousins. Like, yo, what we doing this summer? You know?
Yeah.
So it's that kind of energy. And that's the energy I love to give off for the community. Like, I just feel like, and it's how God wired me, I just feel like we're family. No matter what tribe, no matter what ideology, no matter what gender specific, no matter what religion, no matter you think you're Aborigine, Nation of Islam, New African, Pan-African, African in America, ADOS, this, that, and the third. I just feel like we're family. And so I want to introduce my up top cousins, my New York cousins. I want to introduce the founders of one of the hottest business movements, business podcasts, social, economic empowerment gifts that we have in this generation right now. They're smoking. They're new, but very consistent and very humble. And that's, again, speaks to the spirit. A lot of people get a little bit of followers and can sell out a room, and their ego be different. Their whole energy be different. These brothers, from day one when they reached out to me, from when I came on their panel here in Atlanta, to when they invited me to another opportunity, or whenever I build with them privately, is always, and one thing I remember, I appreciate about you guys, is that you didn't have a problem edifying me and saying, hey, King Jay, like, we watched you, like, yo, you were OG too. Like, you know what I mean? And a lot of times as black men, we can't really, our pride and ego kind of get in the way of like letting another black man know he, like, you know, might have inspired something or did something. And y'all ain't have none of that energy. And so I want to introduce, you know, this platform with the Power of the Black Dollar to the Kings, Rashad and Troy, of Earn Your Leisure, the movement. Talk to them, Kings.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you. It's an honor. I told offline, Jullien and Dr. Watkins, that it's an honor for us to be on the same panel with them. We're big fans of everybody here. So first and foremost, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. And I like how you said movement, not podcast.
Yeah, community.
I like that. Yeah, because that's what
I see what it is. I see you.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, we're just honored to be here. We're ready. And yeah, it's been great. It's been a tremendous 18-month run to connect, you know, some of the brightest minds in the community, from you to Wall Street Trapper, to DJ Envy and Caesar, to connected with Dave Gross, talking about Nipsey, rest in peace. And, you know, it's just really encouraging. And I feel like for us to be a full-fledged media outlet, to give, you know, entrepreneurs and investors a platform where they can actually, you know, provide information to the community is very key. And I think that media is something that's extremely important. The way that we are depicted in media and social media all of that plays a part. So,
Yeah.
you know, to have a role in it is extremely humbling.
Yeah, man, we've put our platform before our personalities. It goes back to what you said about being humble. We knew that the platform would be an outlet. So like when Jullien just spoke about having an avenue for the currency, we're trying to create that for our community. Like these are the different avenues you can invest in, right? Whether it's from trucking, whether it be in mobile homes, whether it be in real estate. We want to provide different views for our community so that they can see, like, listen, this is something that I never thought about, but now that I've heard about it in detail, you guys have broken it down with professionals, I want to pursue that. So we take great responsibility in doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I think what's super important about what you all did is we don't see enough examples and mentorship and people. Like when we came up, it was just ball players and dope boys. Like that was it. Like you ain't never think that you could be a real estate mogul, a fund manager, that you could, you know, have the premier black business school in the country, or a portfolio of 30 doors, or to even have your own media platform, or to have a franchise. Or I mean, we just didn't. I saw my grandfather driving trucks growing up. He still drives trucks to this day, 77 years old, still moving loads. But I never looked at it or saw it as a business, or saw it as him expanding to employ other truck drivers, or how do you finance a truck? Never thought about stocks, or I mean, or life insurance, all these things that we're all exposing. That's what I love. We're all planting seeds in the community. I just think that's super vital. You are showing this generation, but generations to come, like, yo, it look different out here. And it's different than trappers and dope boys and ball players. Like, it's some real swaggy business leaders out here.
It's crazy. Like, I know that they're about to do that ESPN special, The Last Stand, about the Bulls. But it made me think back when I saw that when they were playing Utah. And I remember Karl Malone was big on having 18-wheelers. And I was just, like, laughing. Like, what's this guy doing with 18-wheelers? This is a joke, not knowing that this dude has a fleet of 18-wheelers, and that is actual business. So now knowing it, looking back, it's like, wow, these things have been there. We just weren't aware.
Yeah.
That's super love. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I like that a lot, and I agree with you. I mean, you know, the way I think about it, you know, this is what got me interested in two things. You know, growing up as a black man, there's something in our culture that makes us just different and special in different ways. You know, I think every man wants to be successful. At least every ambitious man does. Every man who wants a woman wants to achieve things, you know, so that he can, you know, so you get a chance to, you know, say, look, you know, I did something. And one thing that never interested me in school was education. I never really cared about learning. And the reason I didn't care about learning was because I did not see it adding any value to my life. I was like, well, how's this going to actually help me get the things I want? And but I was into things like sports. You know, I really was big on sports, and like everybody else, you know, I love, you know, just everything from hip hop to sports, all that stuff. I mean, you know, and I remember that, you know, once I kind of figured out what education could do to help me achieve the things I wanted the most as a man, as a human being, that's when I became very self-motivated with it. You know, that was when the fire just started, and you didn't have to motivate me anymore. I was already like on 10 with everything I wanted to do. And what I found was that, you know, so later on, you know, I got the education, made some money and all of that stuff. And I look back and I just look at our community in general, and I just see so many guys out there, and women as well, that, you know, that just, I think that hustler spirit, it fits right into exactly what we're doing. You know, like if you're a hustler, what do people talk about? What do they rap about? Getting money, being successful, being the man, whatever that means to you, whatever success looks like for you. We want that, right? And I think that what has occurred is that, you know, we were directed in the wrong direction, you know, where the real prize was over here, but we were going 100 miles an hour over there, right? So now it's not really even a matter of changing who we are. It's just taking who we are and aiming it in a different direction, right? Just point the gun over here instead of over here, and definitely don't point the gun at yourself, you know, because we're good at that, right? we were trained very well by the oppressor to point the gun at ourselves or to point it in the wrong direction. Now we're pointing the gun in the right direction. And I think it's just amazing, like where, you know, so like if I go on like the Breakfast Club or something like that to talk about wealth and everything else, it's not like I have to convince black people, especially black men, that money matters, you know, that they want to get money, right? It's just a matter of saying like, well, here's a better, easier way to do it. And I can tell you, because that's my story. Once I knew the connection between knowledge and success and wealth and freedom, man, I was all over that. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have to convince me anymore because I thought about it the same way I thought about trying to win a championship in basketball. You know what I mean? Like you practice, you go hard, you compete, and then you win. So I think that this revolution is an important part of that because it's really unlocking and redirecting that power and potential that brothers have always had, that we've always had in our community.
Right. No, I agree. It reminds me of 2005 when I left the street corner of South 10th and Springfield in Newark, New Jersey, and I went full steam into real estate, right? So I got introduced into real estate in 2002 while on parole. But in 2000, I still was in the streets still, right? Playing around the streets for a few more years. And then I finally, approaching 25 years old, was like, what would happen if I put all my energy that I put in from 15 years old to 25 years old, hustling, I-95 trips, going to Lincoln, Nebraska with cocaine, like all this up late night trips, dodging the cops, stash boxes, compressing coke, cooking coke, all these chemical, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff. I'm like, you know, all these talents and gifts that I poured into the drug game, what would happen if I use all that energy, charisma, talent, critical thinking, right, business acumen? What would happen if I went to real estate full steam ahead? And it wasn't an overnight success. It took me about 9 to 10 months before I actually saw some real worth it capital. I actually went broke going into real estate, was borrowing money before I made my first 30 grand and started building up from there. But once I saw that my hustle aimed at a different product and at a different process, that it was successful, that's really where I started empowering. Then I'm telling the whole hood, everybody I can, all my family, like, yo, this real estate shit is actually not that bad. And I think a lot of us, like you said, have those gifts and talents. We don't know we don't have a different target to direct our aim. And I think what we all are doing with our platforms is we're showing these different bullseyes, these different targets that can give you the same kind of money or even more. I've made 100 times more in business and legitimate business than I did in the streets. And so I think that's super cool for our community. I want to do this. We're going to build, everybody chime in as you want. It's an open forum. I do want to lead us with some kind of questions as we go along. I'm going to start back with you, King Boyce. We're going to go down the line. Tell me, what does the power of the black dollar mean to you? When you hear that, what's the power of the black dollar mean?
Well, the first thought that comes to mind when you talk about the power of the black dollar is that statistic, that one number, 1.3 trillion, right? 1.3 trillion is a very big number. That's a lot of money. To give you a measuring stick, you know, our spending power, our dollar power, if you want to call it that. I don't want to call it spending power because you're not supposed to spend it, you're supposed to invest it. That economic power, it actually gives us 4 times more annual income than the GDP of Colombia. You know, so I was in Colombia thinking about the power of the black dollar. And
this is the country Colombia. You're talking about the country.
The country Colombia, yes. Not the university. The country. Yeah, and I thought about it. I said, this is fascinating. Here you have this country that has about 1/3 or 1/4 of the collective economic power that the Black American community has right here. And in this country, they own their own school system. They have their own movie industry. They have their own media outlets. They have their own sports teams. They in sports leagues. They don't own a piece of the team. They don't own the entire team. They own the entire league, right? You know, you can go down the list, and they have entire industries that they run and things like that. And I think the big difference really is mindset. You know, I think African Americans, I think that because we've been taught that we are some sort of subordinated underclass, that we're not thinking that we can actually be the captains of industry. We're not thinking of ourselves as individuals that can actually control the whole vehicle. We see ourselves as cogs in a wheel, you know, and I think mindset is huge in terms of really sort of saying, okay, we know this money's out there. 2 big things that have to happen. One is that money has to be redirected. Right now, out of that 1.3 trillion, probably more than 1.2 of that 1.3 goes out the window. It goes out to all the other companies that are serving our community with all these businesses and hair shops and corner stores and you know, selling iPhones and all these other products they sell to us because they see the value that we don't see. They see what we have, right? So we need a big redirect. We need to create thousands and thousands of Black businesses that can create the products that will replace the products that we're getting elsewhere so that money can circulate as opposed to just going out the window. The second thing we got to do is we must really, really, really instill the boss mentality so that those of us in the community who are meant to be bosses actually have the confidence and the vision to become that. Right. So, for example, now maybe everybody ain't cut out to be the boss. Maybe some people want to be subordinate. Maybe some people want to just, sort of sit to the side and let somebody else drive the car. That's fine. But you've got bosses in your community who are disguising themselves as employees. You got bosses in your community who never had the boss gene activated. So they ended up working under someone's umbrella when they could have had a much huger impact. Let me give you an example. If we have a black Mark Zuckerberg come along, some baby right now, there's probably thousands of babies right now being born that have the intellect to build a Facebook and to build a multi-billion-dollar company, right? So the question becomes, when that child starts to exhibit the boss gene, when they start to show their tremendous talent, their tremendous intellect, how are we going to nurture that? I know a lot of people who would see that kind of genius. They would see some little 8-year-old who's doing, grown folk stuff on a computer, and they would say, "Ooh, you're really good with that computer. You can get you a good job," right? Right? And so, but then there should be more people who say, you're good with that computer. You can start a multi-billion-dollar social media platform. You could start a multi-billion-dollar company. You can build an app that's going to make you a millionaire. So the point is that you need to activate and you need to nurture the boss gene so that we can actually create our job creators. Right now, we do not have fertile economic soil, which is why that 1.3 trillion in economic power gets blown away and thrown away, because we don't nurture those individuals who have the capacity to reinvest that capital and create the jobs that our community needs. So that's what comes to mind when you say the power of the black dollar.
No, I appreciate that. And what I think happens is that those individuals are outliers, right? And because we're all been groomed to go to school, get good grades and get a job, right? The country itself groomed an industrious class, an industrial class, a working class, right? And so the big thing was to go to school, get good grades, then go to college and get a good government job or to get a corporate job. But it's all been about working in what we call a corporate trap, or we call that corporate plantation. So when someone steps outside that box, we almost feel alienated by them for not going along with the system and what we've been taught. Who do you think you are to go be a Mark Zuckerberg? Who do you think you are to go start your own media platform? Who do you think you are when we've been told this has been the status quo, and now you are, and that's what my brother King Clinton told me. He said, Jay, kings like you, Boyce, Jullien, Earn Your Leisure, etc., you all are bucking the status quo. So that ruffles feathers and make people feel uncomfortable. King Jullien, I want you to piggyback on that same question. What comes to your mind with the power of the black dollar? But also, especially Dr. Boyce, talking about mindset and grooming that fertile land of bosses and entrepreneurs. Can you expound on that for us?
Yeah. So first and foremost, when we look at the dollar, we're talking about ownership. We don't actually own dollars. Right? We don't actually own dollars. The way I think about somebody who owns a dollar is, who does it rest with at night? When all of this stuff, when the ish hits the fan, who does the dollar sleep with? And it's not sleeping with us. It's the one that's leaving us, right? And it also belongs to who actually earns a dollar when they're sleeping, right? And many of us don't earn dollars while we're sleeping. In fact, most of the black entrepreneurs that exist are sole proprietors. So if they don't wake up and go to work, my contractors who work on my properties, et cetera, then they're not making money, right? So we actually don't own that many dollars in our community, and that's why we don't have economic power, first and foremost. Part of this is that we know, and this goes to land and to the dollar, is that we know from our African roots that how we saw property and how we saw currency is not the same as the system that we're in, okay? We had this beautiful place called Africa, and some people may say I'm being hypothetical. We had this beautiful place called Africa. And it was abundant, and it is abundant. It still is. This is why people are still coming and raping it, right? So we have this place, and we didn't see possession or property in the same way that those who came from outside saw it. So we didn't feel like we needed to put up a fence and have these defined lines and things of that nature. And so as a result, when other people with different belief system about property came in, they were like, this is how we see property. We see it as ownership and something for me to possess. we didn't see it as such because we knew that it was a gift from God, right? And so now we are in their paradigm. We are in their paradigm, and this is why real estate is so important. When we look at the scripture, right, after life, after God breathing life into all of us, the second greatest gift that God gives is land. Whether it's the Garden of Eden, whether it's the Promised Land, the second greatest gift is land. And so I'm not really concerned about the dollar because we know that the dollar has no inherent value. It's getting inflated every single year, and it's just paper. What I'm concerned about is what the Earn Your Leisure brothers have on is the assets, because that's where the real value is. And if we were to do a balance sheet of the Black community, I don't care about the 1.3 trillion because a lot of that money is coming from white people, right? If we actually do a balance sheet of the Black community, our balance sheet would be negative, meaning that we actually don't have any dollars. So that's what I'm concerned about, is helping us acquire assets that put us in, that create dollars so that we can reinvest and expand from that way. But the 1.3, we're getting it from people who don't care about us and are actually enslaving us on the corporate plantation. People think they have this good salary. A salary is equivalent to slavery. Once you're on a salary, they can, all of a sudden you're working 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, right? And you divide that by how much you're earning and you realize, wow, I'm making the same thing that the guy at TJ Maxx makes. Right. So we got to be very careful about chasing the dollar. As Dr. Watkins said, we were been taught to shoot in the wrong direction. We're the only ones on Instagram with money phones to our head. We think that this is where the value is, yet there's no asset there. So this is why I don't believe that we actually have a Black dollar, because our balance sheet is actually negative.
You know, that's an interesting, I'm glad you posed kind of a,
what was that, Julia? I can't.
Money phone.
Oh my
These are ones, by the way. Go ahead, Jay.
That's a lot of ones.
What you doing with all those ones, Doctor?
You've been at Doc. You've been at Doc.
Too much quarantine radio.
No more questions, please.
You know what's so funny about that kind of opposing point is I agree that many of us, much of the money in our community is earned income, right? So it comes from us exchanging hours for dollars, and usually those hours or dollars are from businesses and corporations that we don't own many times. But we can, as Wall Street Trapper said, our brother, he said, we can leverage that and we can pimp those hours for dollars if we know how to take those hours for dollars and not be the consumer class, but be the ownership class and then investing those dollars. So if all you do is exchange your hours for dollars at work, to then go recycle that money back in the same communities, right? And you don't actually put the money to work, yes, you are caught up on a negative balance sheet of simply just leveraging your time. Your time is your only real asset because you have no other assets to produce dollars or value for you, right? So I think that's a very good point. Let's see what the kings from Earn Your Leisure got to say on this subject. How do you all see the power of the Black dollar? What does that mean to you and you all?
Yeah, just like I told you, Jay, as far as, you know, I'm a financial advisor, and it was really an eye-opening experience for me when I came into business. I started my career when I was 24 years old, so over like 10 years ago. And when I first came in, my office was in Manhattan on Park Avenue. And if anybody's not familiar with Manhattan Park Avenue, that's, you know, that's like
Park Avenue Monopoly.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting because I'm 24-year-old, you know, Black kid. My name is Rashad Bilal. Everybody knows I'm Black. There's nothing to hide in that. And everybody in my office was Jewish. It was like 95% Jewish and a little bit of Italian. And when I actually started to become friends with a lot of these guys and just be around them, I just realized that the way that we grew up was just so vast. And it's just so crazy that you could be so close and be so apart. Because like they was having fundraisers for Jewish hospitals and Jewish schools, and they wasn't raising $10,000, $15,000. They was raising $900,000, a fundraiser, a dinner. And it really just opened my eye to the power of working together. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even like, you know, like they didn't have to have a rally. They didn't have to have it on the Breakfast Club. Like they just sent a couple emails, and the head of this hospital, the head of this hedge fund, the head of this, and they came together, and they do that stuff all the time. And then I started to see Italian Americans doing the same thing and Irish Americans doing the same thing. And as a financial advisor, it really, because it's like a lot of times when we're growing up and you only see the neighborhood. So it's like me and Troy have this conversation a lot. And, you know, it was crazy that, you know, we actually teach a program, and Troy will talk about that. Yeah. But one of the kids that came into the program a few summers ago, he was like 14 years old at the time. And it was him and another young man. They were both like 14, 15. So we asked him, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? So one kid said an engineer. And the other kid kind of like started laughing. And we was like, well, why you laugh? What do you want to be? He was like, I don't know, something realistic, like probably like sanitation. And when he said that, it really spoke to me, because it's like, those kind of jobs are like hitting the lottery. Like, we think like if you get a sanitation, and it's not like I said, I have none against any union job, but that's like what we aspire to be. And we don't even think about owning a business or having multiple real estate portfolio or owning stock or anything like that. And it's like, we don't even know what we don't know until we're exposed to that. So that's what we really try to do, is just exposure, because it's like, I feel like once you actually start to see like the promised land, quote unquote, and that there's more to life than just sports and entertainment and just working a regular job, and you actually can see, oh, I can actually be a business owner. I can actually, do this. And it's like, a lot of times without that proper exposure, the limitation is set to what you're around. And what you're around is pretty much 9 to 5, get a good job. Like, you hear that a lot. It's like, you get a good job. Right? It's like, that's like a lot of people's parents teach them, go to school and get a good job. But what is a good job? Because there is no such thing as job security. Right. So really, you just putting yourself in a situation where you're in somebody else's hands.
And it goes back to that conversation of nurturing, right? Like, the same kid who wants to be an engineer, we're going to look at it like, yo, good luck. You're on your own, kid. Like, go figure it out, right? There's no mentorship piece. But if that same kid was the best basketball player in the neighborhood, we're going to surround that kid to make sure that he makes it out. And we don't see that. We don't see that in our community with kids who want to be engineers, who want to be doctors, who want to be lawyers. It's like, all right, go figure it out, with no mentorship piece. So that's what we're trying to do here. Is like, look, you want to be that? Great. Let's go find somebody for you in our community that can guide you, right? Because the best thing that they're going to do is teach you the mistakes that they made, so now that you don't make them, right? So now you're ahead of the game, and now you have the mentorship piece. First thing you got to do is now the same thing that was given to you. Now go reach back. And I think that's super important. Like what we're doing here now, right? We have the piece that gauges those two things together. We have the mentorship piece, and now kids who are in the neighborhood can say, like, look, I can start my own media company. These guys just did it, right? I don't have to be that rapper or that athlete. Yo, these guys are just as popping on social media as them. You know what I'm saying? So like, we're changing the narrative, and this doing like webinars like this is what changes the narrative long term.
Now, I'm glad you said that. Just one more thing, and shout out to Derrick Falcon. That's one of our favorite guests that we had on episode 11 of our podcast. And he said so many great things. He's a restaurant owner in Baltimore. And what he said that really stuck with me, what Troy just said, is like, in our communities, whether it's New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, DC, if you see a kid that's 14 years old and he's 6'7", you clamoring around him like, yo, keep him out of trouble. Make sure he get home. Because he might be the next LeBron, right?
Somebody gonna do his homework for him.
Yeah,
all that.
It's like, yo, you clamoring like he gets grade A treatment, or if he could put words together, you bringing him to shows, he might be the next Meek Mill. But it's like the young entrepreneur that got a barbershop, like you throw him to the wolves, and it's like, oh, my crackhead uncle, he just got out of jail. Can he sweep the steps up for you? Like, stop doing that. Like, a lot of times we send the worst in our community at our best potential, because the entrepreneurs, the creatives, those are the future. As far as, and that's going to last a lot longer than somebody playing sports, because your sports career might be 3 or 4 years at most if you're lucky, but it's like an entrepreneur that could last forever in perpetuity. And so it's like, a lot of times the mindset of that is extremely important. And it's like, we see that all the time, where we take care of an athlete, but a young entrepreneur that's trying to sell water on the street, we look at him like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, get out of here. Like you a peasant.
We push them toward careers where there's a 1% like chance of them being successful, where we could be pushing them into careers like computer science, where 99% of the kids, if they study it, are gonna have a success rate, right? So it's like the mindset. I think what Dr. Boyce said is totally correct, right? We gotta redirect the gun, right? Not at ourselves, we gotta redirect it in the right direction, right? Let's focus on something that is sustainable.
Yeah, I really feel like one piece. Oh, Gene just called me. Excuse me. We might got a technical thing. What's going on? One piece that I really feel like is that expectations and values of what we think is the cool thing in our community. Can Jullien expound on that point right there, please?
Yeah. So right now, what I know from a spiritual standpoint, and this goes with what Rashad said, is we define ourselves. We define ourselves based on what we see. Okay. We define ourselves based on what we see. But just because you were born into poverty doesn't mean that you're poor. All right. Malcolm said it in the most powerful way when he was talking about our culture. He basically said, just because a cat has babies in the oven doesn't mean that they are biscuits. Right. If a cat has babies in the oven, doesn't mean that they're biscuits. And we believe that because we are born into poverty, which is a condition, poverty is a condition. What we need to get out of is the poverty consciousness, because the poverty consciousness is what ultimately recreates the condition. So when we define ourselves based on what we are born into, then we accept that as our identity, and then we start operating and being, doing, and having from that place. And we've seen people get out of that mindset and recognize that I come from the Creator. I'm actually a child of God. These are conditions, and I'm going to pose this to the community. The way I think about our situation here on Earth and as people of African descent, I believe that this is a video game, and we just chose the hardest level. The other levels were too easy for us. And so we said, you know what? I want to be black. I want to give me no assets, give me a single mom, give me a terrible education system, and I'm going to go see if I can go win this game. I believe that that's the spiritual choice that we made. And even if it's not, what happens is if we start to see life in that way, that this is an obstacle course that we created in the spiritual realm before we got here, and we only created these obstacles as high, mountains as high as they are, and these pits as deep as they are, for our own growth and development, then it allows us to face what is ahead of us with more confidence and courage, because we know that we created them. What we've been doing is we've been believing that other people are creating these things. And yes, there are some people who are perpetrating. There are other people who are putting obstacles intentionally in our way. But if we just see it as, if we see it as an opportunity for our own growth and development, and that we just chose the hardest level. We chose the hardest level. There's people who chose to have limbs that didn't work. Right? And I chose a hard level. There's people who chose to be blind. That's a very hard level to navigate. And I just believe that that mindset, even if it's not true, I don't know if it's true, but even if it's not true, being able to approach life knowing that I may have created these obstacles for my own growth and development as a spiritual being, a temporary, eternal spiritual being, having a temporary physical experience here on this earth, I think that'll help us get out of the poverty consciousness and move towards a wealth consciousness. Because the reality is, Jay, actually all of you, you know, mostly, I don't know everybody's balance sheet, but I think a lot of people here are millionaires. If you are a millionaire, is your daughter a millionaire?
Yeah.
I'm asking. If y'all are millionaires, are your children millionaires right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? So if we come from a God that is infinite supply and has access to everything, then what does that make us? That makes us millionaires now, even if we can't see it as our physical reality, because we are in what I call the Father's will, right? Because we are written in the will. And so that's how I move with that identity. We've been trying to change folks with information alone, and information alone doesn't change people. What has to change is the identity. And once the identity, which is in the mind, changes, then our being changes, then our doing changes, and our having changes. But if you just put information at people, which is what we've been doing kind of with financial literacy, is just giving people more information, but they still have a poverty consciousness, then they can't even receive the information in the soil of their minds. And therefore the seeds just get put on rocks and they don't go in. So for example, 40 million people, and this is not just black people, 40 million people have bought Rich Dad Poor Dad. 40 million people. There's only 11 million millionaires in the United States. So that's saying that the information that is out there isn't actually leading to transformation. And so that's why I'm focused so much on identity to be the root cause of the change, as opposed to just exposure and information.
You know,
I think that, Jay, I just want to touch on his point about the video game analogy, because I think that's so true. But also, if you know video game culture, man, these aren't solo missions. So a lot of times, and I think that's why I like to highlight us, is like, yo, this sometimes is a two-player game, right?
Yes.
Then when you get into that two-player game, now it's like, yo, I can lean on somebody, right? I could go through these things together. And you know, like if you're playing with your friend, it becomes more enjoyable. Yeah, you're gonna be some pitfalls, but you're gonna get the obstacles together, man. So that alleviates skepticism. Now it's like you don't have to just believe in Shadi or Rashad, right? You can believe in both of us, right? You don't have to have the same type of fear. We're gonna go through this together. that trust gets built. So like the more that they see us working together like we're doing right now, the next generations will follow and see like, yo, all right, let me call on this person, right? Let me reach sideways to see if somebody can help me in the position that I'm trying to get to.
You know, I want to say this seriously, spiritually. Yo, I got butterflies right now. Like, I'm like actually nervous right now. Like the information that we are talking about, I'm taking notes on my phone and I have so much to say. I'm like jumping out of my goddamn skin right here where our ancestors around us on these black house walls. But I want to hit on a couple of points. What you just said, King, about the two-player game is something Dr. Boyce and I built about last night, which I want to dive in a little deeper in a second. But it reminds me of some of what I've learned from this first 2 years of the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, right? And what I told Dr. Boyce is, we talk about collective power, is that if you see Jay Morrison do something, but there's no, you know, it might be Jay and Ernestine Morrison, it's his wife, so she's down whatever he gonna do. But you don't see other leaders who you might respect or know that are aligned with that, you might just think it's a Jay Morrison thing, and we don't really know what Jay Morrison is doing, right? Who's the accountability partner to what Jay Morrison is doing? But say Jay Morrison, Earn Your Leisure, Jullien Gordon, Dr. Boyce Watkins, and Dr. Claude Anderson all went out and started a fund. You would have a little more confidence about that because you feel like there's some checks and balances as opposed to one man or one figure having so much power or so much control or so much whatever, right? So that collaboration piece of a two-man game or even a four-man game has a lot of power. So I like that a lot. And I want to expound on that because Dr. Boyce and I talked about what a collaborative alliance looks like. Now, you know, listen, if y'all around me, I'm a walker, not a talker. So we're gonna be spitting out good ideas and shit. I'm trying to walk them shits down in real life. Like I ain't with just the good idea because it sounded good for the podcast or the panel. Like I don't be pressing to actually get it done. But another point that I want to make that we talked about earlier, I love the analogy also on the barbershop and the basketball player and its expectations and values in our community. Like our expectation or the value we hold is that ball is a meal ticket, right? Like if you're playing ball, it's a meal ticket for the community, for the family, whomever. And we're not really seeing the value of entrepreneurship, business ownership, and what is a more likely success ratio for all of us to, you know what I mean, to be able to produce. And I think that comes from many of our families, our grandmas, our moms, pops, whoever, projecting their fears and projecting their life experiences on us. So the whole get a good job thing is like, look, life was hard for me, son. Like we came up hard. So I don't want you to have it hard. So for you not to have it hard, my best advice for you is to get a good job so you ain't got to go through welfare, through WIC, through food stamps, through, you know what I mean, through unemployment and those challenges. So we're not even like built to dream big and look at abundance. So we're operating from a scarcity mindset and not an abundance mindset. We're not even built for abundance. We built to survive. It ain't about thriving. My mom didn't teach me, you know what I mean? And I appreciate my mom. She had a little more hustle with her. So from a very young age, that video game analogy, how I always looked at it was this is my one life. And yo, I hated poverty so much. I hated that welfare line. I hated having a free lunch in schools. I hated Goodwill knocking on our door on December 23rd to give us hand-me-down clothes for Christmas. So I made up my mind early. And that's what got me to trapping early, which is the wrong route, wrong aim. But I made up my mind early that how hard this video game is, I can't just lose on my 3 men. I got to make this happen. And what I feel like as a community, the way I look at it is, as a African community in America, Black people, the score is 450 years to 0. We've been in last place every year on year. Every year on year, wealth-wise, we've been in last place. So my thing is, I can't change that I'm Black, right? So like in this video game, I'm a Black dude. And our team in this video game is down. Like we down. So my thing is, am I just going to settle for the whole team being down, even though I could score a bunch of buckets? Or are we going to huddle up and figure out what collectively can we do together? Because I hate being in last place and I hate losing. And neither can any of us win this race of the Black community being in last place alone. So the only way for us to advance out of last place is for us to collectively move the culture forward. And I'd like to see in our lifetimes, and I believe it is possible, I like to see in our lifetimes a historical data census. I don't care whoever else goes in last place, but that says that the Black community in one of those wealth columns of family median net worth is no longer just one for a year, for 1 year. I want to move the needle to our community is no longer in last place, just one time in my lifetime, in our lifetime. And I know we can do that with simple wealth building strategies. And I agree with you, King Jullien, in knowledge of self. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Once you really know who you are and what your potential is and see yourself differently, you then can start behaving and believing in that potential and not limiting your expectations of your own self once you really know the greatness you have. Like our daughters and our heirs and our children, like you said, my daughter know she a millionaire. So it's a certain level of confidence she can walk through knowing her dad's abundance. If we really know our spiritual father's abundance, there should be a certain wave and frequency we should be operating off of in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to follow your point about working together. I think, and I know my brother from Earn Your Leisure mentioned that earlier, that wealth building basically is a team sport. And shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson and Powernomics, because he goes into that very deeply. And, one of the things that I think we have to understand is that when you're playing a team sport, like these two brothers that are running their podcast together, is that part of being on a team means having some of the qualities that you possess, and I know Jullien's possessed and as well, that and I'm sure you brothers possess as well. We just met today, but we're friends now. Is there's a certain way you carry yourself when you know you're part of a team and not a solo act. Because we've had the Superman model of Black leadership before, where you've got one guy out front saying, I'm the man, I'm the greatest, I'm the most important, I'm the most significant, I'm this, and then so then white folks, all they got to do is say, all we got to do is kill him, and we kill the whole movement. If we get rid of him, then there is no more movement, right? And so that's an incredibly flawed strategy. And so I think that, and it's funny, it's ironic as well, because I was listening to a guy named Bill Laimbeer who used to play for the Detroit Pistons back in the day, and Michael Jordan, before he won his first championship, if y'all remember, if anybody knows sports history, you'll know that Jordan could not beat the Detroit Pistons. They knew exactly how to stop him, and they said, so how do you think LeBron stacks up against Mike? He said, well, I think LeBron's the best player ever, and I was kind of surprised to hear that. They said, well, why would you say that? He said, well, because it was easy for us to stop Jordan for a long time because Jordan didn't understand the importance of his teammates. If you stopped him, then you stopped the Bulls, right? But once he got to the point where it was about stopping the Bulls and not just Jordan, that's when they started clicking off the championships, right? So a lot of this idea of being a team player means that I think we have to understand that relationship management and wealth building go hand in hand. Go study most multimillionaire families. Go study most billionaire families. The operative word is family. I got friends that are millionaires in Africa who literally are baffled by the idea that African Americans think that we can create millionaires and not respect the importance of family. Not understand basic things like, if you get married, find a way to stay married. If you have kids, both parents are involved with the child. She said, this is my friend, she said, I don't understand how y'all think you could just start over every generation and have anything other than economic despair. She said, we're millionaires now because of what my father's father's father did. And so that ability to work together, to understand relationship management, that is so important that I recommend everybody who really cares about wealth, go study relationships. Go study conflict resolution. Pay attention to the Nation of Islam. I ride with the Nation of Islam largely because I've rarely seen anybody who has better conflict resolution abilities than my friends that are in the Nation. And so because if you contrast that to some of the more challenging aspects of our community, you see a lot of people fighting, and I can't stand that. Just a level of vitriol they'll show to another Black person that they would never show to white supremacy. right? Just like I don't like Jay Morrison because I don't like the idea of a Negro thinking he can be rich or be successful or whatever, right? But yet they got white folks just running away with the bag, you know, billions. They're taking billions out of the community, but they mad because Jay started a fund, right? Obsessed with it, like obsessed with the destruction of Jay, right? Which is really fascinating to me, because, you know, I'm not saying anybody's perfect. I don't know, but I'm just like, what's with the obsession? Well, a lot of it is because you've been trained for hundreds of years to seek and destroy your own. You know, you've been trained for hundreds of years to hate people because they remind you of yourself, because you hate yourself. That's what this is all about, right? So what I really liked about you from the first conversation, Jay, man, I remember the first time I talked to you. I remember the first time I talked to Jullien. I remember like it was yesterday. It's like what they call a flashbulb memory, where I can remember just what the weather was like that day, exactly where I was going. When I was talking to you, Jullien, we were in the car going to the airport. When I was talking to Jay, I was driving through Atlanta. And I remember how great the conversations were, because you expressed something that you don't always get to hear, which is a type of collegiality, where it's like, look, I want to win, and I know you want to win, and I think if we work together, we can all win. And I love that. You know, and when I see people like that, or well, like a Vicky Dillard, you know, the other people that I know that I just love so much, man, that where it's like this is great because we don't have to compete. You know, my success is not a threat to you. Your success is not a threat to me. We can build together. And so I encourage everybody to really, really learn, you know, read books like Success Runs in Our Race by George Fraser, which talks about networking and relationship management. If you have a marriage or children or whatever, you know, if you got to go see a therapist, like my fiance and I, we started seeing a relationship therapist in the beginning of our relationship, not because we had problems, but because we wanted to avoid the problems. Because one of the biggest wealth eaters for a lot of families are things like divorce or families falling apart. Anybody who's ever paid a ton of child support knows what I'm talking about. Anybody who's ever been a single mom and knows what I'm talking about. Like all these things distract you from the ability to build, because people spend so much time destroying, right? So long story short, I think that I second your point about working together. And I think that as a community, just everybody who's watching, really just internalize this one idea that I'm going to find ways to have something in common with you before I find the reasons why I don't like you or I want to harm you. If you just start the conversation there, then your life will be a whole lot more productive.
Yeah, I think we got to get in the habit of building. I'll say, I want to echo your point. My wife, Ernestine, and I have been avid about counseling. We've done counseling since premarital counseling, all through marital counseling. And not just for issues, but because we know that communication, people don't have marriage problems. People have communication problems. You're not one person on their ego or their pride that day, one person in their feelings in their bag. It's really a thing of conflict resolution and being mature enough to communicate. Same for us in business. Unless somebody's being a total knucklehead or slime ball, there is no business disagreement that none of us cannot talk through. There's none. Unless somebody is intentionally just lying and operating out of a dark spirit. There's no amount of money, there's no back-end splits, there's no licensing fees, there's nothing that we cannot talk to if our priority is to build. And that's how it happens. So Dr. Boyce, I'm gonna pass to everybody real quick. So if everybody can spend just a minute or so on this, not a big topic, but I do want to share for our audience, and you mentioned something to me the other day I thought was really powerful. I want everyone to give an example if you have. I know Earn Your Leisure gave one a little earlier. They have another one, they can speak on it. But an example of other communities. I know you mentioned the Jewish community and the Warner Brothers and media, but examples of other communities where they've come together or have built wealth or influence in a particular industry or just in general. Like what's some examples of other communities that we even know, read about, or seen for ourselves where they have come together to pool their power of their dollars?
You want me to start?
Yeah, let's start with you, Dr. Boyce. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, in the Black Business School, we have all of our students read a book called How the Jews Invented Hollywood. You know, and that book is, I have them read that book because it is a very detailed chronicle how a group of marginalized Eastern European Jews, if you know anything about their culture, the Eastern European Jews are considered to be the lower level of the Jewish community. Even other Jews discriminate against them. And so they really couldn't get the jobs they wanted. Their kids couldn't get into the schools they wanted. So they had to make a plan to create their own jobs, build their own schools, and all these other things. Not that they went through the same experience that Black people go through, but it was something similar. And so what they did was they started pulling together their capital. They took advantage of this emerging industry of these moving pictures. Edison and whatever Black person he was working with had just invented, the movies, basically. So you just had these amazing stories where, for example, the Warner Brothers, they basically sold the family horse and opened up a little tent where they were showing movies in this tent. And that turned into Warner Brothers Studios. And then MGM came out of that. Universal Studios came out of that. The William Morris Agency, which mostly your Black celebrities are either down with William Morris or they're trying to be. They created this whole multi-trillion-dollar industry that's running controlled by the Jewish community, and they went through a lot of the same challenges that we go through today. It wasn't this sort of smooth sailing. It was this sort of up and down thing. But you have people that sort of formed a core commitment to building something long-term together. And that's what led to the creation of Hollywood. Now, the one thing I will say that distinguishes our journey from what they were experiencing, the Jewish community, when they first started building Hollywood, the main difference between us and them is that we have more to work with than they did. We have more resources. We got more millionaires. We even got billionaires out here. We have celebrities. We have far more to work with. Even if you look at when the NFL was created, those guys didn't have as much money as Jay-Z and Colin Kaepernick and all these other guys. So I'm sitting there just fascinated. I'm like, why are y'all fighting for ownership of a piece of a team when people with less wealth than you actually created the entire league? And the Chicago Bears were bought for about $500. Now they're worth $3 billion just a couple generations later. Do we lack vision to that extent that we can't see that? So I just think that the opportunities are amazing, but you have to start to see them. If you don't see them, then they don't exist.
We're gonna get back to that. I mean, that's my plight. That's my mission, and that's what the Tulsa Fund was about, to show us something innovative, different, far out there, something we thought was unachievable, like owning a league, right? Most people would say, man, we can't own no, we might have to do a little baby league. We can't own no real NFL. Like, in your mind, we don't even see it as achievable. It's an exposure thing. It's like when we said that, we can own a barbershop, or we get a sanitation job, but you can't be no engineer. You can't be a pro. So even on those levels, we limit our expectations because of exposure or just lack of the knowledge of self and how great we actually are. Like, I believe all those things are freaking possible. Like, we can have our own, and that's what it's about. Owner, as Andre Hatchett says, owner be owned. As the Wall Street Trapper said, if we allow them to feed us, we give them permission to starve us. I made a spin on that. If we allow them to house us, we give them permission to evict us. If we allow them to heal us, we give them permission to, or fund us, we give them permission to deny us. So we got to get to this thing that ownership is hard. Ownership takes work. That's the thing, too. Sometimes we don't want to work. Like the thought of freedom is cool, but the work behind freedom, are we really ready for that? But I believe that we can own every single thing that we want if we have that spiritual knowledge of self, mindset shift, and if we can collaborate together, we can get there. King Jullien, if you talk about just some examples of group economics that you are familiar with or have witnessed.
Yeah, it was really hard for me to come up with this. Being from California, the one that comes up for me is Allensworth, but I'm personally tired of referencing other cultures for our model, because we know those cultures are out there. We can name them off, but deep down inside, I believe that our model is likely different than theirs. And what we've been doing over and over and over again is trying to replicate or catch up to other folks. And I think that's what got us caught up and has us moving away from our true identity. So Allensworth, being that I'm from California, Allensworth, of course, was started in 1908. And it was basically a replica of Tulsa with Allen Allensworth. He was the top Black colonel in the United States Army before he set out to create this town. It maxed out at 300 people in 1925. And you know what ended it? A water supply. Because it still had to rely on another company to provide it with water, and that company did not follow through. The water supply was not good enough to support that town and the irrigation that it needed for the farming. And as a result, it petered out. So that is, I took a field trip there when I was in school in California, because I grew up there. So Allensworth is my greatest example. We have little examples, I think of like 6 to 10, where we see it a little bit in hip hop, you know, with Drake, or we see it in LeBron's crew and things of that nature. I'm here in New Orleans. Master P is probably one of the greatest examples of it in terms of ownership. I was really asking myself the question, what Black community or individual has created the most Black millionaires through their presence on this earth? And I had difficulty coming up with that answer, and I would like to explore that question with everyone. If you know who that individual is or what community that is, I would love to be able to explore it. But that was a question that was on my mind, because I'm trying to look within as opposed to without.
Absolutely. And we're going to go to Earn Your Leisure. And as for our live stream watchers and replay watchers, we are going to get into how we build wealth after the crisis that is coming. They're asking in the chat. When we're going to talk about building wealth, this is all the foundation of building wealth. Wealth is patient. Wealth is long-term. That's part of our problem. We want microwave wealth. We want microwave information. We want oatmeal. It's coming. Oh, this is the foundation. If you can't find the wealth building fundamentals within this conversation, you are missing the whole boat. But we are going to get to the practical, tactical, how we build wealth in just one moment. Earn Your Leisure, the Kings, the dynamic duo. Talk to us about some examples maybe you guys seen or how you see group economics in that way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always been, I played sports my whole life, and one of the great things about sports, I went to a lot of different schools and traveled, and I met a lot of different people in my journey, and it really took me out of growing up in high school, it was like probably 70% Black and 20% Spanish, but once I started to really travel, I started to really interact with other cultures, and that's really something that has really helped me and broadened my horizons. I encourage everybody to travel and to interact with as many people as you possibly can from all over the world, from all different cultures, because I feel that, the more you learn, nothing wrong from learning from other people. And the more you learn from other people, it will help. Just recently, I went to my first Indian wedding this summer. And I have a friend who's Indian. And if you've ever been to an Indian wedding, it's a whole thing. Like, it's a week-long celebration. They have like 3 different weddings and ceremonies, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. They spend a bunch of money. But I say that to say I learned a lot about the Indian culture. And if anybody's familiar with like Indians in America, you know that they pretty much have a monopoly on the motel industry. Like, they own I think 80% of motels are owned by Indians. Subway chain, like 70% of subways are owned by Indians. They also 7-Eleven. And I was talking to him, so I was talking to my friend, so I'm like, what's up with the motel situation? Like, why would you choose a motel? He's like, well, the thing about motels is that it's cheap. It's something that people always need, because it's not like you trying to buy a Marriott or a Ritz-Carlton. Like, you get in at a very low entry point, and like truckers and people that stop, it's a low cost situation where people need to stay $50 a night, $40 a night at a motel. And he was like, the play is, for our family, what we do is that, we buy a motel, and then everybody from India, they come over and they work the motel. So now everybody that's in the motel is part of their family. So now they learn in the business, and now the CP, when the kids go to school, if you want to be a CPA, all right, cool. You could be a CPA, but you're going to be a CPA for our company. And it's like, so now you bring in the business people as a CPA. And then when you work your way up the chain, now it's not so like, okay, I'm gonna work my way up and then I'm gonna get something different. You're gonna stay within here, but now you're gonna get your own. So now it's like, that's how they was able to grow it so rapidly, because it's like everything is in-house. They bring their family, like literally their blood family, over from India. They learn the business from the time that their children working in the motel. And now when there's enough, now there's a collective group that puts money aside for this person to get their motel, and they repeat the process. So that's just one example of, and that's, like I said, that's something practical, because it's not even like they, doing something that is so unbelievably out of reach. But to see that firsthand and to have that conversation, and the way he broke it down to me just made so much sense. And I'm like, that's brilliant, but why aren't we doing something like that?
I think it might be going into the next thing you're going to be talking about, Jay, and that's making family plans, right? Like, that is a prime example of planning that is going to go on from generation to generation. And what we see in our community is like, we like right now, like we're flying a plane and we're building a plane at the same time. So if it crashes, like, all right, well, we got to start over. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we don't have a model. You know what I mean? There is no plan. So like, that's why it's so important to be doing this and be showing real live examples of these things happening. And like what you said, man, if I like to use that music analogy that Jullien said. It was like, look, if we're going to rely on them to feed us, then they can starve us, right? So like, even now, like with the music industry, every one of these music companies, from Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, Interscope, even Def Jam, which we think like, oh, Russell Simmons, no, it's owned by the same community. Our media outlets, ABC, CBS, NBC, owned by the same community. So even though that, and I see some people in the comments saying we are culture, yeah, we are the culture, but they are dictating how we are being viewed. And that's very important too. So make sure that you are aware of these things so that when the music is teaching you or the visuals are teaching you, you're teaching your kids too, like, listen, this is another route, right? These images here, yes, they look real in real life, but I'm gonna teach you some family planning that's gonna last you a long, long time that these entertainers and some of these media personalities won't be able to do for a long term.
Well, you know, your family is your first small business, really. I mean, if you can't manage the family part right, it's hard to do much anything else. You know, it just is. I mean, that's what the stats show. You know, that basically, if your family personal life is crazy, like you fight with your woman every day, you know, you try to pay for kids, it's like spread out everywhere, you know, and you constantly, and you're not getting any support from anybody, then it's very difficult to go out and build an empire when that first one isn't managed right. So really, I would almost say anybody that has kids, some really basic things you could do for your kids. One thing that we talk about a lot in the Black Business School is what we call the $5 a day plan, where basically I show everybody mathematically how if you invest $5 a day for your child when they're little, that by the time they're in their 20s, they're going to have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets. The math is really straightforward and really straight, you know, very simple. So, you know, if you invest for your child, but also make sure that they know how to buy stock at an early age, that's very easy. You can teach them that in 10, 15 minutes. Number two, I believe every Black child by the age of 12 should know how to start a business just for their own survival. They can go get a job if they want, but they should know how to make money, like where money comes from. And, you know, and money doesn't just come from you doing a job and somebody paying you. It should come, they should understand all the different ways to make money so they can survive. The third thing is, when your children are young, you know, spend a couple of days or a couple hours making sure they know the basics of home ownership and why real estate is important. It doesn't have to be a complex, long, drawn-out class, but it could be just basic things like how Jay always talks about how the world is just a big ball of real estate, and Jullien talks a lot about, you know, the power of multifamily properties and things like that. Like I think that just those basic things, like teaching your children like where the money's at and who makes the money and why they have more money than other people, that helps them to understand, like in sports, like in basketball, you know, you got multiple moves now. You know, it's very, very hard to win a basketball game if you only got one move. But if you've got 20 different moves, then it's very, very difficult for obstacles to stop you or to slow you down. It's hard to play defense on a player that can go left, go right, shoot a jumper, shoot free throws, hit layup, slam dunk, you know, whatever, we can shoot from half court. Like, it's hard to stop a player like that. So basically, when you give your children like different ways to make money, they become like that player that's got multiple moves. And what you don't want is you don't want them to have that one move, which is, I need more money, I got to find me a job. Because that's the move that gets everybody locked up and hemmed up to the point where people say, well, I can't take care of my children because I can't get a job. Well, it should go deeper than that. They should have more moves than that. And I think as parents, it's very important that we teach our children that, so the next generation, they don't have the same problems that we have.
I totally agree. And I love the move analogy. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence, right? And I've built my confidence like over the years, obviously very pro real estate, because real estate saved me. Real estate saved me from the trap. Like, if it wasn't for that, like, ain't none of this. Ain't no Jay Morrison y'all know is Jay Morrison in a tan suit somewhere, you know, probably doing 15 years of life or dead on a Newark street corner. So, you know, I had an affinity to real estate because of that. But as I dove deeper and became more mature in my entrepreneurial career and my legacy career, I believe in the model of being the CEO of our last name, the chief executive officer or the leader and visionary of our families. I noticed that I had to increase my moves. So I was cool with real estate and entrepreneurship, but then I got really nice with financing and then understanding leverage and credit. Then I started understanding life insurance and whole life and term and IUL and death benefits. Then I got nice with cryptos. Then I got nice with stocks and finance, right? And so increasing my wealth knowledge base so I can give it to my wife, God forbid I'm not here, she knows what to do, as you talked about families building intergenerational wealth. This ain't no one-man band show. It's not supposed to be me, a superstar, blow money fast, can't take it with me, oh, I'm gonna show you what I got. It should be like, yo, how do I build these Morrisons up so my daughters are straight? My daughter is a junior, going to be a senior next year, believe it or not. She'll be 21 years old in June. She was born while I was in prison in upstate New York, goes to Wash U in St. Louis, one of the top colleges in the country, going there for international relations and political science. But I told her, you can go to grad school. She may go to law school after, or policy school. Fine, do all of that. Be who you want to be, but you must, one, build credit. She's been building credit since 15 years old. You must understand that credit is not about the score, pride, and ego. You should not be someone with an 800 credit score but ain't got 800 in the bank. You need to be, you need to understand that credit is a paper game of leverage for you to be able to use it to build more assets. If you're going to be a psychologist or in international relations, you better own the building in which you are working in or have other assets to offset your other earned income, right? So it's about instilling a mindset. If you want to have a career in a job, that's fine. But you should know how to own. You should know how this life insurance policy works. You should know that, God forbid, your dad goes, I'm going to die someday, right? At some point, you know, whenever that is, and you get a 7-figure inheritance, you should know not to blow it fast. You should know that 7-figure inheritance you're going to receive is to set my granddaughters, your daughters, and your daughter's daughters up for the next generation. So my daughter has a responsibility to continue the legacy that I am working diligently on leaving her. Not just I, that my wife and I, our family is. That's why we call it Morrison Group of Companies. I've gotten more intentional. I used to call it the Jay Morrison brand. See, too individualistic. It's the Morrison Group of Companies, the Morrison family companies. We have to start looking at our businesses, our brands, our entities, our intellectual property, and our assets as family wealth. And that's one thing that, you know, I believe we all need to do. I want to talk about this topic. So the goal of this webinar was to talk about how we build wealth after the crisis. So we all got warmed up. We talked about kind of the baseline of wealth. And I want to give us a few different stats and perspective, right? And I want to give you guys a secret low-key mission and goal that I didn't tell you all, right? So I got a secret low-key mission and goal. It's not self-serving, believe it or not. So here's what I got. I appreciate you, King Jullien. We don't got to use other communities as an example for building wealth. Let's go back to our own. In 1905, a Mississippi entrepreneur by the name of O.W. Gurley bought 40 acres of land in Tulsa Town, Oklahoma, after the whole Oklahoma rush, because everyone was fleeing the Jim Crow South to go to Oklahoma, where it was Indian territory, although the Indians there owned slaves. And we're working with the Confederacy to keep us enslaved. But nevertheless, Oklahoma was supposed to be the free land, and it was the Oklahoma land rush, where they literally had a line of families camped out, like hundreds of people camped out for the government to press go, and they were offering like 6 million acres of land for everybody to rush into Oklahoma and stake your claim. O.W. Gurley staked 40 acres of land in Tulsa Town and partnered with J.B. Stafford, again, dynamic duo, O.W. Gurley, J.B. Stafford. They partnered on what's called today as Black Wall Street, Greenwood of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And from 1905 to 1921, they built up 36 square blocks on that 40 acres, over 2,000 homes and businesses to 15,000 residents of what we call Black Wall Street. They had their own planes, own bus lines, own schools, own movie theaters, own hospitals, own all that, right? And that was bombed and burned down on June 1st of 1921. I mentioned that historic community of Black Wall Street, Greenwood, what Booker T. Washington called Negro Wall Street. I mentioned that because our fund, the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, is named after that community. Now, around the same time period, a Jamaican-born Black man from the diaspora by the name of Marcus Garvey traveled to the United States to meet with Booker T. Washington as they were corresponding through letters. Before he could meet with Booker T. Washington, Garvey died. And Booker T. Washington died, And Marcus Garvey founded an organization called the UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association. And Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, during the Spanish flu, the Spanish influenza, Marcus Garvey went around the country doing corner classes, basically, around the country, building with black folks, writing letters throughout the diaspora internationally, organizing the African diaspora and black community. And Marcus Garvey was not only able to galvanize 20,000 black people at Madison Square Garden in New York for nearly a month through his organization, he also was able to raise $800,000 of an initial raise for the Black Star Line, a company that would hold a fleet of ships for black folks to have export and import to Africa and other countries throughout the diaspora, and to be able to travel to Africa should we. And Marcus Garvey and the UNIA raised $800,000 approximately, equivalent to $11.3 million today. There's no social media. They raised an equivalent to $11.3 million from old school grassroots people, offering $5 a share of the Black Star Line company. He offered that $5 a share, which is, I'm told, is equivalent to $500 today, which is equivalent to what we offer right now. Tulsa Real Estate Fund as a minimum of $500. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA were able to build businesses, start their own newspaper, Black Nurses Corps, factories, right? A whole onslaught of businesses in a Black Star Line fleet of ships, right? So I want to give us this thing, this call to action and this thought for this conversation. So our fund, Tulsa Real Estate Fund, on your leisure, I don't know if you guys are partners yet, but if not, y'all gonna be today. So y'all haven't, y'all gotta join the crew, you gotta join the family, the company. But we are partners in this company. I wanna give us some information real quick. And I wanna tie it into my secret thing I tell everybody. So under the Tulsa Real Estate Fund, I got current stats today. We have organized and galvanized over 10,200 co-owners and partners of the first Black-owned real estate crowd fund in the history of America, named after Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So over 10,200 people, 8,600 of which names are on that wall in our foyer, in our lobby. We have galvanized over 10,000 people for the act of group economics. From those individuals, families, and institutions, we have raised over $8.7 million, right, that we all were a part of. From that, we have built an estimated current value of assets under management of $12.2 million. So we raised $8.7 million. We have a estimated portfolio value of $12.2 million, or $3.4 million of investment collateral equity, right? Our anticipated hold period, right? We'll anticipate, and I want to tell you about what our fund is doing this month. We are having our final capital call, final capital raise by midnight, April 29th is your last chance to be a part of the first Black-owned real estate crowdfunding in history, the largest act of group economics from a Black-owned company since Marcus Garvey and the UNIA in 1920, in the last century, 100 years. And right now, the second largest act of Black-owned business group economics in the entire history of the United States of America. That's our company today, 2020. That is facts. These are not disputable. This is, go do your research, right? I'm not talking about donations, GoFundMes, and Kickstarters or collection plates. I'm talking about co-owners, partnerships, and equity, right? So your last chance to join our company is April 29th, right? Dr. Boyce's company, Jullien's company, is soon to be, if not already, Earn Your Leisure's company as well, right? So I want to tell you guys where this is going. Our minimum hold period is 2024. We'll make a decision if we want to cash out the fund or we want to keep it going, reinvesting our assets. As we are lending to minority investors, we lended over millions of dollars to several minority developers around the country. Our fund is just not us investing, it's actually being a funding source, as well as our direct investments like the Black House. We've helped Black women develop apartment complexes, multi-units, etc. through our fund. We've been able to do all these economic acts, and we have a projected net cash flow by 2024 of $13 million should we cash out, or 8.95% IRR, or internal rate of return, to our fund and all its partners, right? So for every investment, every investor is entitled to an 8% annual cumulative return, meaning it adds up every year that it's not paid. So our fund gets that plus a percentage of our future profits. Now, I mentioned April 29th, and I mentioned a secret thing I want to give all you all. So April 29th, we're having our final capital raise because we can't begin giving distributions or dividends to our investment partners until we have closed our raise. Our attorneys do not like walking the compliance line of us raising capital while we're distributing capital, because that gets along those lines of, well, where's that money? Are you raising new money to pay old investors, AKA Ponzi scheme? We don't want any of those thoughts. We don't want any of those gray areas, Dr. Boyce. So in order for us to pay distributions and dividends, we have to stop bringing in new capital to walk a fine line of clear compliance. So April 29th is the final capital raise. Now, my goal is, I'd love for us to raise another $2.5 million for us to surpass Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Garvey in the UNIA, and to be the largest act of group economics in Black American history. That would be great, to use the ancestors' blueprint and model, and for us to supersede that in the social media era. But my bigger goal has always been for the fund to make it bigger than me, although it may not seem like it at times. I'm just doing my best. And so where I want to go with this conversation, of course, I want to invite everyone to go to Invest with Tref. That's T-R-E-F, investwithtref.com. We have our SEC disclosures, our annual financials and audits. We have everything fully documented and disclosed for you, our portfolio, our highlights, the who, what, when, where, why, investwithtref.com. So I want to invite everybody there to become an investment partner with us and do your research about our fund and what we're doing, right? So the bigger play outside of a successful final raise, April 29th, and part of why I wanted you all on here. My vision was always to use this fund as the beta test to how we practice group economics, right? Prior to Tulsa Fund, how would we, in knowing this model of a Reg A Tier 2 fund or mixing non-accredited investors and working class investors, right? That's a special part about our fund. Anyone wealthy can have our wealthy friends come together and we can do a fund. But there's only a certain government regulation that allows non-accredited investors, meaning those who have a net worth less than $1 million or make less than $250,000 a year, working class folks. There's only a certain government regulation that allows working class folks, non-accredited investors, to invest with the wealthy or accredited investors and institutions. And that's the regulation that we have executed. We have the compliance for, the treasury team, the bookkeeping, the third-party auditors, the controls, the financial reporting, the legal compliance, the SEC compliance. We have the financial analysts, the underwriting, the marketing, the branding, all that. We built a system that was not about Jay Morrison in this one little fund, because we know it's little compared to all the trillions in the world. But what it was about was, what could we do now? So here's the fun part. I'm going to go to everybody. I'm going to start with Earn Your Leisure. Think about it. If your brother, Jay Morrison, your cousin, right, your cousin from Jersey, Jay Morrison, has proven to be able to raise over $8.7 million from our people in 2 years, right, and others from other communities as well, have contributed towards our vision, from 10,200 investors for a real estate fund, and has produced these assets, $12.2 million of assets under management. What could Earn Your Leisure do? And I'm going to go down the podcast, Jullien next, Dr. Boyce next, and even outside of you all, because I had a conversation with Queen Afua, one of the mother healers of our community, and we talked about what we could do in regards to owning and operating a Black-owned hospital and turning it into a health and wellness community that we own together. But with this proven model of group economics, because Dr. Boyce, I'm thinking about numbers, and I'm like, wait, $20 million is just 20,000 of us investing $1,000. 20,000 of us investing $1,000 is 20 million overnight. 40,000 of us, King Jullien, investing $1,000 is 40 million overnight. At an 80% LTV from a bank, that's a down payment on a $200 million loan. So 40,000 of us investing $1,000 that quick, the money we would have spent with Gucci, Louis, Sparkles in the Club on BS hair weave, and all other stuff that we are doing as liabilities, if we channel that, and I'm not even talking about the TREF, so let's make it bigger than Jay Morrison and TREF. If we channel that to another initiative that we collaborate on, or whatever it might be, we could be in position to put a 20% down payment on $200 million. I'm talking about proof of concept. That was the whole goal of this fund. It was never about me. It was about proof of concept of how we actually build wealth together. And now let's talk about how we could build wealth after the crisis. Because April 29th, TREF is stopping his capital raise. So it's no longer about me. All I'm doing now is investing into Legacy Center, our phase 2, funding more deals, buying more assets, and making sure I can meet our returns and our projections as a fund manager. But now with your brother having a knowledge base and the infrastructure, we don't got to go to another consultant or someone else from outside to try to tell us how this is done. All the attorneys and legal people trying to tell you how a reggae fund is done, they don't even know. They haven't even done one. And they haven't done one with over 10,000 investors. We have the largest pool of an initial offering in a reggae fund that we've seen through research from any owned company, black, white, or otherwise. We bring the most investors into one offering from any company in the reggae space. And so with this knowledge base, let's talk about what we can do as a community. And even if it's not you and other spaces that we think of, could we raise $50 million for a gas company? Could we raise $50 million, 50,000 investors at $1,000 to own our own water? What could we do with now knowing we have a proven model for group economics, even outside of TREF and a real estate fund? What can we do after the crisis together, knowing we have this model? I'm gonna start with King Troy and Rashad.
Yeah, for sure. Salute to you for that, for everything you've done. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to check out the Black Center yet, but next time we in Atlanta,
we coming.
Hopefully the quarantine will be over and we get a chance to take a tour of the Black House for sure. So, I mean, broad range, obviously, like we haven't given it too much thought, specific ideas, but I think that there's always benefit as far as group, and whether that's coming together to talk about the hospital or, you know, coming together in a school, things of that nature. I think that it's important for people to understand, to be educated, because a lot of times, you know, I think what happens is that false information gets thrown out because sometimes people might not be sophisticated investors, right? And they may not fully understand how investments work. So it's important to understand, and we tell people all this all the time, we talk about stocks, specifically stocks, is that it's never a get rich quick thing, right? You don't put $500 into something and expect to get 30,000 in 6 months. That's not how it works, right? So I think it's important. I think it's extremely, extremely important for people to be educated, because what we don't want to happen is to, you know, a lot of people just kind of just fighting mini wars, right? And then that kind of defeats the purpose, because now it's like, okay, we're building something. When I say we, I'm talking about the community as a whole. We're building towards something, but the vast majority of the people may not be on board, where a select few evangelists are on board. That's not really beneficial, because even if a select few are on board, if the vast majority don't perceive it as something that is beneficial for the collective group, then it won't even work, because even if it works financially, the support won't be there. And Black people do that all the time, where they don't, it's something that the support doesn't come out at the same level for other cultures. And this is why a lot of, if you look in fashion, right? Like we interviewed Jay Alexander, one of the founding directors, one of the founders of FUBU. And FUBU was one of the biggest fashion lines ever in history. And was asking him, like, you know, why do you think it fell apart? And he was saying, you know, just over the course of time, it got too big, and Black people started mocking it and making a joke out of it. But I've never seen anybody make a joke out of Polo, Ralph Lauren, or Tommy.
It took one video with somebody from our culture to make a joke of it and then put it in a movie and it was a joke, and it destroyed the brand.
Yeah,
that easy.
So I say that to say, Jay, I think that there's a lot of possibility, but I'm more of a, they say I'm a pessimist all the time. I don't really consider myself a pessimist, but I really like to just cross my I's and dot T's and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And when I say everybody's on the same page, it's the community. I think the community has to be fully educated on how investments work, how equity crowdfunding. People never even heard of equity crowdfunding before.
Yeah, there were so many people when you did an episode about equity crowdfunding, they had no idea what it meant or even the foundation. And I think it goes into the mindset of our relationship with money. We haven't had the best relationship with money because most of us come from nothing, really pretty much. So we don't know how to value it. We don't know how to invest it. We don't know how to save it, right? So when you say like it's $500, like you look at statistics, 66% of Americans, Black Americans, have less than $1,000 in their savings account. They don't have it, right? So to have a relationship with it first, to understand the value of it, to understand that it's not meant to be sitting in a savings account. It's actually supposed to be working for you. I like the analogy that one of our former guests said. He treats dollar bills like they're soldiers and they work for me. So I have to go put them out to work. So if we understand that, then we can go into a state of actually putting it into something that can benefit us long term. But our mindset has to change on the value of it and understanding what our relationship with money is and how it can work and how it can be mutual beneficial and help us long term.
You know, I agree. That's why I think all of us do the work that we do for educating and informing. And Ra, I think you're kind of a pessimist because you're a financial advisor.
That might have something to do with it.
Right. Like that's what you're trying to do, you know? Like, but I will say, like when you say that stat of Black folks having less than $1,000, but also I went to Chicago. We were looking at a 30-unit apartment building, and I was talking to one of the wardsmen of Chicago. There's a lot of real estate development on the South Side, right? One of the poorest districts of Chicago. He said one of the most saddest sights he ever sees is December 26th. December 26th, he said, you look up and down these alleyways in the back of these houses in Chicago, on the South Side, in the hood. He said the same people that you're seeing who cry poor all day, every day, looking for handouts, looking for subsidies, looking for this, ain't got no money. But we look down those alleyways, December 26th, the day after Christmas, all you see is boxes of TVs and boxes of clothes and boxes of video games and boxes of sneakers all outside for the trash. Yeah. So to Dr. Boyce's point earlier, I think Jullien said it, yeah, we claim that we ain't got no money thing, but we sure do got a lot of liabilities. Yeah. And Jordan sure do sell out. Yeah, iPhones still do be selling. Hair still be did. Then birthdays still be kept. Then Christmases still be had. Then Valentine's Day still be trips. Right? And so I think we got to challenge ourselves sometimes too to see maybe we don't have that money in the savings in the bank because we aren't being financially responsible and we aren't making the right investments with our capital. So that's just kind of one point. I thought you were saying something. You build on that.
It goes back into it. Like we spend more than any other race, right? But we have the highest rate of people that live in poverty, right? So that goes back to that relationship with money. Right, I can't afford a TV. Right, that $400 I could have bought stock into Samsung, or I could have bought stock into Apple. It's just the relationship value that we have with the money that will determine our long-term future.
No, absolutely. So, and what I thought about, like and I think that's all part of putting the puzzle together, right? I think we all agree with the information, education, the self-awareness, indoctrination. But if my thing is again. Why I'm so assertive and aggressive even, is if we down 450 years to zero, and if the goal is building Black wealth, then we have to figure out ways to educate, to galvanize, and accelerate our community. Otherwise, we're going to always talk about this 1.3 trillion. We're going to always talk about these poverty. I mean, I've been hearing these poverty stats since 2005 when I started at Liberty State Finance on Union, New Jersey doing mortgages. And then again when I was working at Sotheby's in 2012. And all through the last years have been the same stats about how broke we are, lack of home ownership, And so it got to get to a point where our actions got to meet or beat our ambition. If we're saying we need to rise as a race, and that's why I love about Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Garvey. He always said, listen, don't be mad at white people for what they've done. They handle their business. He said we should be mad at ourselves for not handling our own business the same way that they've done. And so I think as a people, we have to certainly be responsible in our investments for sure. But I also think that we have to be very intentional about getting ourselves out of this. And if we don't have ownership, we will always give them permission to feed us. The only way to get ownership is through, my belief, is group economics. And the only way to have group economics is you got to bring together the group. You can't have group economics without a group.
Yeah,
we got to get our people on the same page for that group. Dr. B, go ahead.
Hey, Jay, let me throw this in here too. You know, when I talk to my daughters about dating guys, you know, one thing I remember telling them was, I said, look, if a guy I said, men that love women, they love women. If you want that woman, you're gonna make time for her. You're gonna find a way to get it done. You know, Bill Clinton wanted to make time for Monica Lewinsky. You know, he had all kinds of stuff on his agenda, but he always got time for that special time, you know what I'm talking about. So I just tell them, I say, look, if a man tells you he ain't got time to see you, that means he really don't want you. That's just a point blank period. A man that really wants a woman is going to make time for that woman. And so I think that applies to really anything in our lives. You know, most things, I'm a busy person. You know, my time is eaten up with a million things. But when something is important to me, when it's a priority that I cannot miss, something that I know I must do, I'm going to move something else out of the way so that I can do the thing that's important to me, right? So you know, my woman knows that. She knows that if I say I ain't got time to do it, she knows what I'm really saying. It's not important enough for me to take something else off the table, right? And I say that because, you know, when you're talking about that money thing, we know that money, we don't have as much money as white people. We do know this, right? But but when people want to sell a product, when people really want to get money, they go to the black community. Because when we really want something, we'll make it rain. We will make sure it happens. You know, Beyonce's coming to town. People that don't have the money will find a way to get the money. You know, and when the Jordans, I happen to meet the guys that run the Air Jordan brand, and you know, and it's fascinating to me. I'm right here in Chicago. It's fascinating to me how many broke people I see wearing like $200 shoes. Now, this is not anti-Jordan. This doesn't mean that if you wear Jordans that you're stupid, or if you spend money, if you go to concerts, you're dumb. What it means is that maybe there's like a lack of balance, right? The balance means, you know, okay, whatever amount of money I'm gonna spend on Jordan sneakers, I'm gonna spend the same amount buying me some Nike stock to go with it. You know, and that way I got a balance. Like if I go eat, like, you know, like when I started trying to lose weight, I knew what was causing me to get fatter. It was because I was eating chocolate cake and Twizzlers and all that. Well, guess what? I lost weight, but I still eat chocolate cake and Twizzlers. I'm not letting that go. But what I do at the same time is I make sure that I also eat something healthy. You know, or after I eat the chocolate cake, I'm going to go, you know, jog around the block a couple of times so I can have the balance. You know, but if you take the balance out, then all I'm doing is I'm taking in chocolate cake and Twizzlers, and I'm giving myself diabetes and heart disease, and I'm going to die, right? So here's a final stat I'm going to lay out there for you, man, in terms of just the power of the vision of people like yourself, man, is like, think about this, right? When Disney put out the Black Panther, they hit the jackpot, man. I mean, they hit the nail on the head. We were just pumped up about this movie. And they put $200 million into making this film, and they made it for Black people. They studied our culture. They studied our buying habits. They studied what we like, what we want to see on screen, what actors we want to see. They studied us the same way you study an animal in a cage to just, you know, to where you know the animal better than he knows himself. So they knew exactly what was going to trigger us to spend money, and they hit every trigger, and it worked like a charm. They put $200 million into this movie. And when it was all said and done, they have made $1.23 billion from this film. And you cannot tell me in a million years that they would have made anywhere near that amount of money if Black people were not in love with that project. It was Black folks' love for this movie that drove this movie to become an international phenomenon. We didn't put up the whole 1.23 billion, but we probably put up at least 300, 400, 500 million of that 1.23 billion. A broke community, a community that has no money, just put up $400, $500 million for Disney, a bunch of people who make it abundantly clear that they don't give a shit about your Black ass. 1,000 people could get shot in the hood tomorrow. Disney would not even release a statement, I'm sure, right? So here's what my thought is, right? What if we get to the point one day where where a movie like that, a movie of that magnitude, a blockbuster, not a blockbuster film, but a blockbuster film like a Black Panther was made and funded and owned by people that create funds like yourself, right? Like a Tulsa Fund got behind a massive project, a $100, $200 million project where we already had not just the know-how, because you know we got filmmakers, actors, actresses, everything we need to make a movie, we got that. Right, you in Atlanta, you know that better than anybody, right? So we put up the 100 million or 200 million or whatever, and then on top of that, we got a customer base of millions of people who've been following, you know, what you're doing and what I'm doing, what everybody, Jullien and everybody else, Earn Your Leisure, and they're all committed to supporting this film when it comes out. So you put that $200 million into that film, it turns into $1 billion, and then you've got $800 million in extra wealth coming right back into the community. That's a rinse and repeat model that's been done in Hollywood since forever. Tariq Nasheed's tapped into that just a little bit with the Hidden Colors franchise. That's a that franchise will probably be worth $50 to $100 million if somebody tried to go buy the Hidden Colors franchise from Tariq. And he created that out of the Black community. So what I think we can do is, among many things, there's many things you can do, but that's one thing we could do that would just be an absolute game changer, and not just for financial reasons.
Yeah, you know what, Jullien, I want to hear if you have anything original to say. But I want to build on that one concept right there, right? And I want us to kick tires, and that's what I really want, because I'm talking about, y'all gotta understand me. I'm saying this to the live stream, and I think you guys know me a little bit well. I'm just I'm just practical as hell. You know what I mean? And so I thought of the Tulsa Fund in 2015 during a panel after Freddie Gray in Baltimore. Baltimore people said, yo, let's build a Black Wall Street. I said, well, how? What does it look like? Started doing the research. 5 years later now, we have Tulsa Real Estate Fund. I walked it down, put up the money for the lawyers, SEC, legislation, financial audits, all that, right? So what I'm saying is that I really believe in legacy and doing the impossible and just doing what, you guys can't see it on the screen, but there's so many ancestors on these walls. I mean, there's Garvey, there's Madam C.J. Walker, there's Angela Davis, there's Fred Hampton, there's Malcolm, there's Martin, there's Harriet, etc. I just believe in the impossible. I'm just one of them people. I'm a super optimist. And I think I'm an optimist because I came out of poverty, came out of 2.5 years in prison, have no college education, and have accomplished some amazing things in life, and God has used me in an amazing way. So I believe I'm in a 30,000 square foot building by myself that's owned by the people, free and clear, that we own together on a 2.6 acre campus, 2 miles from Tyler Perry's studio, just 5 minutes from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the world's busiest airport. I believe in the impossible, right? I come from the hood, 30th Center Street, Somerville, New Jersey. So I believe that we can do that exact same thing Dr. Boyce said, right? So we would need 4 funds, because, well, actually, no, Reg A has increased their maximum to $75 million now per year. So just say to raise $150 million, we would need 2 $75 million funds, right? And we would need 150,000 people to invest $1,000 to raise $150 million. In real life, this is calling on everybody. Yo, Tip, what's up? Dave Banner, what's up? Tariq, what's up? Everybody pulling all cards together, right? King Rashad, to your point, making sure we have an educational, teachable portal for everybody to come through to be educated on how this investment works, all that. I'm trying to say, like, what is stopping us from literally, because that's, now imagine we do that, right? So all I'm saying is that we've proven with Treff, boom, we already know. I know exactly how much it costs to start this fund. It's under 100 grand to start the infrastructure to be able to launch a Reg A Tier 2 fund. I know exactly what has to happen through the filings, through reporting, through compliance, and all that, right? So we got that, we beat that learning curve. I took the darts for the learning curve. I took all the reputational darts, King Rashad, of people that weren't educated, that think it's this. I took the darts, took the shots, trailblaze. Now, how we take this model and then figure out how do we do some master plan shit with everybody, right? Building wealth out of the crisis and say, okay, let's come together. So what's stopping us? I'm saying, like, really, like a philosophy from our community mindset perspective, whatever it is, Dr. Boyce, Jullien, whoever, what's stopping us from literally pulling together a model like that for our community to say, yo, let's go own our own team, let's go own our own hospital, or let's go invest in a major blockbuster film. Let's get with Will Packer. Let's get with some of the bigger producers in the country. Let's get with some of the actors. Let's give everybody equity. What do you think are our challenges? I'm a big thinker. I want big shit. I'm 39 years old. By the time I'm 80 and going, 80, 90, and hopefully going at 105, I want to have seen some amazing shit from our community. So what stopped us from making those kind of big, bodacious accomplishments?
Yeah, so my thoughts on it is that the big word is trust. The big word is trust. And for whatever reason, multi-level marketing organizations, things of that nature, people don't trust, especially when they're sending their economic resource to another brother or sister. They also have never actually experienced what it means to have passive income. Many people have never had that experience. I know it wasn't real for me until I acquired my first property in Brooklyn, my 3-family, and I got rent checks coming to me as I was living in the owner's unit downstairs. And until you actually experience passive income, it's not real for folks. For me, my start into this kind of venture is doing what is real for folks, and your my world is real estate. And right now, what's going to be the number one thing on discount in the next 2 to 3 months is going to be real estate, right? And you're literally going to be a 30% discount. But what's going to happen is for our people, the financing guidelines have contracted, right? MG, Matt Garland will let you know the financing requirements have contracted. So our people will not be able to take advantage of all this discounted real estate that is there. And to the extent that we can actually find a location similar to big business, Greg Parker, finding a location that we want to center our real estate investments on and acquiring that property and actually putting people through a housing program that actually allows them to get finance, even though the banks won't finance them. And then we actually gentrify that community, which means to increase or appreciate the value of. That would be the actual demonstration. People will not be able to rely on banks for financing at this moment in time, but the Tulsa Real Estate Fund and $150 million fund would be able to provide that financing. And I think right now, like we said, there's been a lot of players, and all of us are players, and we're trying to figure out how to collaborate. Doing one-offs, the same thing with real estate. When one person's buying a multifamily over here on this side of town, another one bought it over here, there's no economies of scale, there's no aggregation there. But if we can identify a neighborhood that we are going to claim as the first model and leverage that into real estate, which is a tangibly backed asset, right, which covers downside for people, as opposed to just a stock or a movie idea, I think that could be a powerful play and demonstration. So that's where I start. I always lean towards multifamily, getting people an asset in their last name. But the challenge that our community is having is similar to redlining, is financing. They're going to have challenges financing, so they won't be able to take advantage of this discounted sale that's about to occur. And if we can raise to that, I think there's a huge opportunity and possibility to secure the fund's assets by having equity, walking into equity that we know is going to come back. And then also the mission of creating home ownership, not only home ownership or home buyership, not single family, but multifamily home buyership for those who have invested with TREF, as well as those who've gone through the Black Business School, the RBCs, and Earn Your Leisure curriculums.
No, I love that. And of course, I'm a fan on the real estate side. I do believe that multi-unit apartment complexes, I believe that land banks and bundle deals of whole centralized areas and communities. I think with 75 million, 150 million, or even the several million raised with TREF, hopefully we'll reach over that 10, 11 million mark by April 29th. I think will be a great opportunity to provide more funding, go buy back bulk deals and discounts as this real estate market, as we believe, will depreciate. I'm going to circle back to Dr. B real quick. Dr. B, if we did something like a movie, right, which is not necessarily backed, you have intellectual property, but it's not backed by a physical asset in most cases, right? And we did a movie, but say the idea didn't do as well as we thought. How do we protect our upside and reputational damage if we tried to? That's the hard part about trailblazing, right? We want to be progressive for our community and do something. We want to shoot our shot. If it goes well, you're the hero. But if you're the one that put it together and that shit ain't work out, man, you are the villain of the Black community. Although they'll go spend, like you said, money for a movie and get Warner Brother richer or Disney richer, never see nothing on that investment of that, have no ownership in it, and be totally fine with throwing it away with a company. But it's something about investing. I had people that said, I would have rather donated $500 to the Tulsa Real Estate Fund and got a t-shirt than invested it and be concerned with a return. I literally had influencers tell me, I would have rather have donated and gave you the money and got a t-shirt in return than actually invested and be even concerned with 8% and all that kind of stuff, because we just don't even think about money that way. What's your thoughts, Dr. Boyce?
I think there are a lot of ways to minimize your downside risk. First of all, everything's going digital anyway. Even before the quarantine happened, you know, my spies that work in different movie studios and whatnot told me that their goal was to pretty much come to where we already live. So a lot of your film distribution is going to go digital, and we already operate heavily in the digital space. All of us do. And so what that means to me is that when you're talking about, you know, putting out a blockbuster film with blockbuster level money, and you want to minimize your risk, well, you utilize pre-existing digital platforms and partnerships to lock in your return before you ever shoot a single reel of the film. Lamar and Ronnie Tyler, you ran Black and Married with Kids, and now they run Traffic, Sales, and Profit. When they were making films, now they were doing films, you know, at the $20,000 mark or less, I think something like that. They would pretty much make all their money before they put the film out. They would get the people that are really behind the movement to go ahead and pre-commit at a discounted price to buying, you know, a copy of the film. So they already knew that they were going to make a profit before they even put the movie out there. So I think that model could be applied on a broader scale. Maybe instead of doing $20,000, $200,000 films, you then apply it to, you know, to $1 million project, maybe $2 million project, right? And there's also ways that you can do, like when they talk about that MVP model, minimum viable product, where you can do enough testing in advance to know if you got a hit on your hands before you put the hit out there, you know. So if you run a series at a low cost, so you're doing, you know, projects out of your studio, for example, that are not big budget items, but you put it out there and you see that this particular move has a big base to it, you know, then that's when you go in and you just double down on something that's already working. So I'm not a big believer in gambling or taking on unnecessary risk. I'm a believer in winning a game where you already know in advance that how the game's going to be played out. You know, not to the point of a rigged game. I don't believe in rigging the game, but I do believe that if you get an opportunity to get enough information to know the outcome before you roll the dice, that's a better way to invest than just taking a chance.
Absolutely. So we kind of reached our time. I don't want to hold everyone over. It's been a 2-hour panel webinar. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have some last rounds. I'm going to start with Earn Your Leisure, the Kings. I want you all, if you can, and I appreciate your time and your input, your insight, and the gems you dropped and seeds you planted for our community today. I think we should do some more of this. I think we get even more. I'd love to do some more building, collaborating like this. Kings, Rod, Troy, if you can, tell our viewers one thing they can do in their real lives right now during this quarantine and crisis to prepare them for wealth after the crisis. If you can just give them 1 or 2 gems of what they can do for themselves outside of our group economics after the crisis, and then also close out and let them know where they can follow you all and tap in more to the Earn Your Leisure movement.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having us once again. And to all of the panelists, Jullien, Dr. Watkins, pleasure to connect with you guys. Look forward to doing some more stuff in the future. So yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me is education, right? And that's why our platform is really more of an educational platform than anything. Because I mean, I could tell you, okay, look to buy stocks right now is discounted, even though the stock market has had its best 2 weeks since 1940, I think, something like that. As Jullien said, and I believe the same thing that he says, real estate will be discounted pretty soon. It's common sense, but 33% of America can't pay their rent in April. And, you know, people are forbearing on their mortgages. So I think real estate, there's a lot of opportunity in real estate. So, but biggest thing for me is education, because everything is not for everybody, right? You can make money in media, you can make money having a podcast, you can make money in real estate, you can make money in stocks. And it's not one shoe fits all feet. So I would say to take this time to fully educate yourself. And everybody here has a platform where you have a bunch of resources that you can actually learn from and invest time and energy in. So that'd be my biggest takeaway. And learn to save. Learn to save. That's before you even go. I think that's something that, because we can talk about all these different strategies, and we've talked about some extremely high level stuff on our podcast. We've had you know, hedge fund managers. We have everything. Venture capitalists, shout out to John Henry, and talk about extremely high level information. But it all comes back to the basics. I think this financial crisis has really taught us that you have to have savings, right? And it's like, if you can't save money, you'll never be in a position of power. You'll never be in a position to invest in a Tulsa fund. You'll never be in a position to invest in yourself. You'll never be in a position to help your family. So learn to live below your means. Learn to have some discipline, and learn to, you know, take your financial life very serious and run it like a business. Right? A lot of times we just winging it. We just spend money. We have no idea how much money we're spending, how much money's coming in. And it's like, if any business was run like that, they'd be out of business within a week. So run your life like a business, live below your means, save money. And like I said, it's not the most sexiest thing, but times like this, it really highlights that point that you don't want to be one paycheck away from a financial crisis.
Yeah, I've been using this for the past couple of weeks. it's not idle time. I want people to stop thinking that they have idle time. It really is idea time, and it's time to be creative. So educate yourself, like he said, but also inside that is take some self-assessments and figure out your value point. Like, what value are you bringing to an environment? Because after all this is said and done, and what we're seeing right now is that companies and even entrepreneurs are seeing, like, listen, I can do this myself. Like, I didn't need you to do it. I thought I did, but I realize now that I'm doing this work from home, I really don't need you. So what's going to happen is if you can see that if you're not adding value to the environment, then you're going to become expendable. So people right now should be, like you said, educating themselves, finding a skill so that when we come out of this, you have a skill that will be tangible and will be needed in this new normal that we're about to face.
Yeah, and you can find us on earnyourleisure.com, all of our outlets. Our podcast is on all of the streaming services, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Earn Your Leisure on all social media. And then you actually did 2 episodes for us. Thank you for that. You did 1 solo episode and you did a live podcast, which was an episode as well. So a lot of information for that. If anybody wants more, if any of our listeners that may not have been totally familiar with the Tulsa Fund, Jay, we asked Jay a lot of questions about that, and he explained it, as well as he explained a lot of other just basic real estate questions. So, you know, it's just try to be a platform for people. But once again, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's important, that what he just said, like, do your research. So if you want to know more about Jay Morrison, head over. We had a whole sit down with him. And Jullien mentioned 2 other guests. If you want to hear about real estate, right? And he said Greg Parker. We sat down with Greg Parker and interviewed him about what his plans are, what is the next city that he's looking at. If you want to hear about Matt Garland, that's the home team, right? So all these things are on the platform. So do your research, educate yourself in those topics.
Yep, and as well as the Earn Your Leisure Assets Over Liability shirts.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that plug. A lot of people are asking about that. Yeah, that's on our website.
Those are great shirts.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The value of trademarks, you know, a lot of people ran off with this, but we have it trademarked. So the only place that you can get it is our website, earnyourleisure.com.
Yeah, we gotta get some to you, Doctor.
Yeah, for sure.
Boyce.
Everybody.
Yeah, I would love. I'm gonna go and buy one. I don't want a free one. I'm gonna buy it from you. I want to respect your business.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
No, that's love. Yeah. Assets over liability says everything. But thank you guys for your contribution. Look forward to doing some more collabs, building, etc. I'll be reaching out. Let's swing over to King Jullien Gordon, brother. Same thing. Some call to action people can do right now to build wealth after the crisis in their individual lives, and where they can find you, your resources, and what you're contributing to the culture.
Yeah, so we just need to come up with our own commandments. And I think rule number 1 is no living on your own if you don't own anything. No living on your own if you don't own anything. And so we've seen other communities do it, but it's not rocket science, so I don't give them credit for doing it. But honestly, we need to be doing what I call house huddling right now. House huddling is we stacking into houses in order to save up on our biggest expense, which is our housing expense, which takes up 1/3 of all of our revenues that we are getting from an employer or from our business. If your auntie lives 2 blocks away from you and your brother lives 5 minutes away and y'all all renting, that makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so, yeah, there may be some family drama. There may be some beef. This person doesn't like this person. But when you all are paying $1,000 rent, 6 of you are paying $1,000 rent, that's $72,000 in rent every single month on top of your utilities, internet, all that other stuff, right? But if you go house huddle and you are paying $2,500 for a huge 3-bedroom, the biggest 3-bedroom that you can find so people can have their space, and yeah, 2-bedroom, 2 beds to a room, that's going to put you at $30,000 instead of $72,000 coming out of your family's name every single year. I mean, this is just real straight up practical. It's dorm living. For those of you who went to college, it's back to dorm living. But that's the sacrifice that you have to make for a short time to position everybody in the family to have their own and not be struggling. And so that is my most practical piece of advice that I could give to you. If you do not own anything, you should not be living on your own. Okay. And so, yeah, there's sacrifices to be made. If your parents got a basement that you can go stay in, go live in the basement. You got issues with your dad, you got issues with your mom, get over it. Get over it, because that's the only way we're going to get over this hump in terms of this economic, this wealth gap, if we aren't willing to, as Dr. Watkins said, deal with the inner conflicts that we have within our families, right? Some of your grandparents are sitting on houses, they're alone, but you want to be living downtown. You want to be living downtown and you paying rent and you seeing money just go out, but you don't want to live in your grandmother's basement. My neighbors in Brooklyn, This is an Asian. I'm living on Fulton and Utica. My neighbors come, Asian family. They live in 8 deep in the owner's unit. They live in 8 deep in the owner's unit. Within 2 years, they bought another property 2 blocks away, and 4 of them moved into the other property. 2 years, just like that. So that is my most practical advice that I could give to everyone is go get your rent expense or your housing expense as low as possible. And yeah, that's going to be meaning shacking up with family. Probably not, shacking up with family if you have to, whatever it takes to get that expense down for a period of time. It's a temporary sacrifice. And so that's what I would encourage. You can find me at Jullien Gordon on Instagram, 2 L's IEN, and you can go to getfreenow.com for all of my free resources. So Jay, thank you so much for putting me on. It's been great to be here. Brothers at EYL, I appreciate you. Dr. Watkins, you're a mentor to me, so I'm so grateful for you. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely not. That was some sound practical advice. You know, I preach and teach the same thing, the multifamily strategy, that huddling strategy. But that sacrifice word is really key for us because we're so into conspicuous consumption, and meaning that we consume so we can be conspicuous and see how we look, see how big our house is, how nice our penthouse is, our condo, how nice our car is. We're consuming all these things so you can see me win, see me ball, or see me look rich, when in reality, I don't own anything to my name. And I think that living below our means and that huddling are 2 big practical steps that everyone can take away with for after the crisis. Dr. Boyce, wisdom, please, and where everyone can find you in the Black Business School movement or anything else you want to enlighten us with. All
right, yeah, man. I will say this. First of all, I enjoyed being here today, and I appreciate the love and respect, man. And I'm super excited in the sense of I deeply believe that we're a part of something very, very special. And how special it becomes is really our choice. You know, it's it's like when Jordan's playing Game 7 against the Utah Jazz, he can decide if he wants to, make it into a historic moment, or he can just, miss an opportunity. So I think that the focus to turn this into an historic moment is something that requires us every inch of the way, every step of the way, every single second that we're here to just go a little bit further, go a little bit harder. You know what I mean? To find that extra breakthrough that's sitting right there waiting for us. We just got to go dig and find it. And so one thing I will say to everybody watching is understand that you are a part of this. This is, we might be guides, we might be instructors, to some extent leaders, but for the most part, this is a relatively leaderless sort of movement, because what we're all trying to do here together is we're trying to change the culture. We're all pieces of this universe. And so the way you run the kingdom called your house is a very important part of all of that. None of this can happen without, the first teacher, which is the mother, and the second teacher, which is the father, in terms of really thinking about just how this money thing is going to work out. You see, so when you talk about money, you can break it into a couple categories. You got the short money and the narrow money, which is one person hustling for themselves right now in this generation. That's it, right? That's the short money. That's the narrow money. The long money and the broad money is when you have groups of people working as families and communities, hustling across multiple generations to achieve big goals. Most of the things that are impossible to achieve, if you have a narrow, short money perspective, are very easy to achieve when you have a broad, long-term view. So, for example, one of us trying to rise out of poverty and become a billionaire is very difficult, if not damn near impossible. But all of us working together over 3 generations to create billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in wealth is quite feasible. It's very easy to do, actually. It's very easy to do. So what I really want us to really understand is that when you talk about playing this team sport called wealth, I want you to think broad, and I want you to think long. I want you to understand that you're in a relay race across several generations. You must hand the baton to your teammate in a better position than you were in. The race, in fact, the race is really just beginning for your family. You have one small role to play. Your greatest teammates are not even born yet. Secondly, when you're talking about the kids in your house, some basic things you can do is, number one, every Black child in this country should own shares of stock before they get out of elementary school. You can get on your Cash App right now. Get on Robinhood right now, Acorn right now, Stash, E-Trade, Ameritrade, wherever you want, and you can buy that first share of stock right now and then just keep rinsing and repeating. And that right there will pull you way out of poverty just by doing that over a 10, 20-year period. In fact, we have a website, firstshareofstock.com. There's a free training. I can show you how to do it in 15 minutes. It's firstshareofstock.com. Second thing, every black child in America should know how to start a business by the age of 12 for their own survival. They don't have to be an entrepreneur, but they should know how to be a boss. They should know how to survive economically just in case white folks ain't hiring. So that should be a rite of passage. So the same way you send your kids to football camp, or you send them to basketball camp or cheerleading camp, our kids should also be sent to money camp at an early age. They should be going to business school at the age of 7 or at the age of 8 so that they're way ahead of the other kids when they get to the college level. So those are basic things that you can do right now in your household. And also I would encourage you to understand that the business school, the universities that charge you, $50,000 a year, that have a lot of you in debt, which is actually destroying black wealth. A university student loan debt is the #1 factor in the destruction of black wealth. I hope you guys know that. Those universities have been replaced. Those business schools have been replaced. You have experts in your community like Jay and Jullien and the brothers from Earn Your Leisure and a dozen others that Jullien was naming out for me the other day that are better than the professors that you're paying all that money for, and you can circulate the money in your community and keep the costs down. So we have the Black Business School. You guys might know about that, but there's a lot of institutions out here where we need to occupy that game. I think when it comes to business training in our community, wealth training in our community, economic training in our community, we should have that game on lock. If you ain't learning from black people, then you ain't learning shit. That's the way I see it. That's my opinion. So that's all I want to say. I want to say thank you guys for having me here. It's been an honor, man, and I'm really excited about all the great things we're all going to do together.
Yeah, fam, that's the real Boyce Watkins on Instagram at the real Boyce Watkins. He is the real Boyce Watkins in the flesh. I want to say this as we close. When I thought about our challenges, I thought about our sense of self-worth, and I remember in real estate, my first year doing mortgages, I was a realtor, I was a landlord, I was flipping, I was wholesaling, right? And in my first year or so, year and a half in the industry, I struggled again for 9 months, started catching my rhythm, and I was closing a deal, foreclosure deal, where I stood to make $93,000 on this opportunity. And I remember on my way to the title company where we were closing the deal, and the whole time I was telling myself, this ain't, I literally, in my soul, I wasn't even gassed off of it. I'm like, this ain't gonna happen. Like, God ain't gonna allow me to walk into this place and leave out with $93,000. Like, it just don't happen like that for me. Like, not from where I'm from, not with what I've been through. I really didn't think I was deserving and worth that kind of abundance. Now, if you'd have told me that we had 6 keys coming from LA and I was about to hit a lick in Baltimore, I'd have believed that shit. But you told me I'm about to make $93,000 in a wire transaction from a real estate play off of me doing a foreclosure opportunity. I literally didn't believe it. Even after it closed and the title agent signed and notarized it, I'm like, let me check my account. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't believe this shit. And so I think as a community, we suffer from that self-worth kind of thing. Like, we can't believe that billions can be ours, that we can control billions. Not just Oprah or Jay-Z can make billions. No, that we as a community can control tens and hundreds and billions of dollars and resurrect our own assets, our own media, our own movies, our own institutions, our own hospitals. Like, yo, we can do that shit. We've done that shit. Not only we can do, we've done it. We just haven't seen it in generations. We haven't seen it literally in centuries, us own so much. And so I want us to encourage us to get kind of past that. I thank you everybody for attending, to all of our live viewers and watchers. I want to invite everyone to do your research. Go to investwithtreff.com. Yes, April 29th is the last chance to be a partner in our historic company. Want everyone, again, Gene put up our website for us. When you scroll through the website, there's so many disclosures. I want you all to read our audit, read our disclosures, see our portfolio, see what we've done, see how the process works. This is, again, a beta test of the first, largest, and only Black-owned real estate crowdfund in the history of America. It's the largest act of Black owned company, group economics, where people have ownership in the company together in the last 100 years in real life. That's not something to be excited about. As we've gotten excited for iPhones launching and dropping and concerts happening and NBA finals and everything else. If this, stop right there, Gene. If this is not exciting to you, 10,200 plus people coming together as co-owners and partners, raising over $8.7 million, building a fund value of $12.2 million, $3.4 million of investment equity with a projected hold of just until 2024 and a projected net cash flow of over $13 million for 8.95% return off a minimum $500 investment for 10 shares of ownership in our company, which means you have shares and member ownership of not just the Tulsa Fund company, but all of the assets that we currently have acquired and are developing, and the future assets we'll be developing over the next several years. Scroll down, Gene. If that don't get you excited to do something that we haven't done in the last 100 years, to own apartment complexes together, to fund minority investors and developers together, to build this Black house together, if that don't get you at least excited to do research, to see about it, you know, we on a wrong conversation, a wrong frequency. If we keep allowing them to fund us, we allow them to deny us. If we keep allowing them to house us, we allow them to evict us. If we keep allowing them to feed us, as the Wall Street Chopper says, we give them permission to starve us. I'm about self-determination. I come from the school and thought of Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Dr. King when he was on his Dr. King economics kick, the Black Panther Party, and all those who believe in we should do for ourselves what we can do for ourselves. It's not about why can't Jay-Z, why can't Oprah, why can't LeBron, why can't some hip-hop star, some athlete, or some celebrity come and save us. It's on all of us to come save us. You can't have group economics without the group. Stop waiting for some magical leader or some fairy, some magical fairy to sprinkle fairy dust and repair dust on Black people. It's not happening. Nobody's coming to save us. It's on us to save us. Tulsa Real Estate Fund is one of the first platforms to be able to allow us to have equitable economics. But I hope to God it's not the last platform that we have to do this. I want to offer my talents, my gifts, these 2 years of experiences, of headaches, of great times, right? There's been some great times, some memorable moments. But I want to offer all that to any influencers, any investors who want to build a like fund of group economics after our April 29th final capital raise. Please reach out. I'm about collaboration. Let's have an equitable relationship where you can take my intellectual property and experience so we can do more of this so that we can give our community more opportunities to have ownership. Y'all, I'm really big on ownership and control. It's nothing like going to a 30,000 square foot Class A commercial building in Atlanta and you can open that joint yourself. You ain't got to wait for the landlord or the security or the guy to come get you when it's yours, when it's ours. And so I want to extend that spirit of ownership to all you guys. Go to Invest with Tref, T-R-E-F, investwithtreff.com. April 29th, your last chance to invest in a historical Tulsa Real Estate Fund. These are facts in real life. Be a part of history. Thank you all again for being brothers and comrades. Next, we'll have some sisters on as well. Shout out to our queens. We can't do it without the queens. Dr. Boyce and I know that. We talked about that. All you all know that. So again, anyway, love, Jay Morrison, I'm out. King Eugene, thank you for all of the sophisticated digital training here. Thank you to all our streamers and viewers. Thank you to all our Tref Life partners, Tref Life in real life. I see you guys, Earn Your Leisure, Jullien Gordon, Dr. Boyce Watkins, Jay Morrison, and we out. Peace.
Peace.